Hello, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Tonight, we'll slow everything down and step into a space where the day's worries can gently fade away. This is your time to unwind, to breathe deeply, and to let your thoughts settle like soft clouds drifting across a quiet sky. In just a moment, I'll share a calming bedtime story, crafted to help you feel cozy, safe, and at peace. As you listen, let the words wrap around you like a warm blanket, and allow the gentle rhythm of the story to guide you toward rest. So, find a comfortable spot, close your eyes if you'd like, and let's begin our journey into a serene night of relaxation. The light enters through a slit in the reed mat that serves as your door, thin and pale against the dust that clings to the mud brick walls. The Nile has long since begun its rise, but here, away from the cool of the riverbank, the heat lingers even in morning. You wake slowly, the stiffness in your joints reminding you of the day before. The work of carrying baskets of silt to the fields, the harsh rhythm of lifting and bending. Your body aches, more than it should for your years. When you sit, the ache in your belly twists like a rope pulled too tight. The air is thick with the scent of oil and smoke. Your wife moves quietly across the room, grinding barley on the low stone quern, the rasp of stone against grain, steady and dull. You should help, but your stomach churns, and the weakness in your legs makes you hesitate. You have no words for this heaviness that settles deep inside, only a certainty that it will not pass easily. Outside, voices rise and fall. Neighbors calling to one another, the bleating of goats from the enclosure. A man leads a donkey loaded with baskets of fish toward the market near the river. The scent of drying reeds and the faint tang of dung rides on the wind. Life hums beyond the doorway, yet you cannot rise to meet it. You press a hand to your abdomen, feel the sweat gathering along your ribs, though the day is not yet hot. The pain has a pulse now, like something alive. When you try to drink from the jar in the corner, the water tastes stale, and your throat burns as it slides down. The world narrows to the coolness of the packed earth floor beneath your palms, and the tightness that creeps through your limbs. Your wife notices. Her eyes flick toward you, quick and worried, though her hands keep working the grain. She murmurs a prayer under her breath, words for protection and health. The old phrases carried from her mother. You know them too, though you lack the strength to speak them aloud. There is comfort in the sound, though it does not ease the pain. By midday, the fever grips you. The room tilts when you stand. You stagger to the doorway, leaning hard on the reed frame, and stare out at the glare of the sun on the courtyard. Children run past, their laughter sharp, cutting through the haze in your mind. A smell of baking bread drifts from a neighbor's hearth, warm and bitter, and the hunger that stirs in you is weak, swallowed by the sickness coiling inside. Your wife brings you a small clay cup filled with a dark liquid steeped from herbs, leaves gathered near the canals, bitter stalks the color of ash. The taste is sharp and acrid, clinging to your tongue. You swallow because she asks you to, though bile rises after. She does not speak of fear, but you see it in her fingers, tightening on the rim of the cup before she lets it go. The sun slides westward. Shadows stretch long across the walls. You lie on the mat, its woven fibers rough against your skin, and listen to the sound of the village breathing around you. The thud of feet on hard ground, the lowing of cattle, the distant slap of oars on water. These are the sounds of life, and yet they feel far away, as though you are already apart from them. When the fever worsens, she calls for the Swung W, the physician. His arrival is marked by the scent of resin and incense clinging to his linen kilt, his hand stained with the dark smears of oils. He kneels beside you, his face calm, eyes shadowed beneath the heavy line of black coal. He touches your forehead, your belly, listens as you struggle to draw breath against the fire in your chest. He speaks low to your wife, words you cannot hold on to. Then he turns to you, murmuring a blessing to Sekhmet, the lioness who guards against disease, and lays a strip of cloth soaked in some pungent mixture across your brow. The smell of myrrh and fermented barley fills your senses, dizzying, thick. His hands move with practiced care, but there is something in his gaze, a distance, as though measuring your life against forces beyond reach. Night falls slow and deep. Oil lamps flicker against the walls, their light bending and breaking in the uneven lines of mud brick. The fever does not break. Your body trembles as though gripped by the cold of the river in flood, though the heat under your skin burns relentless. You hear chanting. Your wife, the physician, voices weaving through the dark like threads of smoke. Words to soothe, to shield, to plead. But the pain is a weight that will not lift, pressing down until the room fades, and with it, the murmurs and the light. Only the bitter taste of herbs lingers on your tongue, and the sound of your own breath, shallow and harsh, as the night closes in. Dawn comes like a whisper, pale and fragile against the walls streaked with soot from the night's lamps. You wake in fragments, slipping in and out of a heavy dark that clings to your thoughts like wet linen. The air is cooler now, touched by the breath of the river, yet your body still burns. Sweat beads along your neck and soaks the mat beneath you. Each movement drags, as if the weight of the earth presses upon your limbs. Your wife kneels beside the hearth, coaxing a flame from a curl of dry reed and dung. The crackle of fire sounds distant, muffled, though you are near. When she turns, her eyes search your face, and something falters there, something that makes her glance away too quickly. She brings a small bowl to your lips, thick with ground barley and honey. The sweetness catches in your throat, too heavy, and you turn aside, gagging. Her hand hovers, uncertain, then withdraws. She murmurs another prayer, low, her voice nearly breaking on the name of Isis, mother of healing. The physician returns before the sun climbs high. His steps are soft, deliberate. He carries a small chest bound in leather, its corners worn by years of use. From it, he draws strange things. Rolls of papyrus inked with words you cannot read. Jars sealed with clay. Bundles of dried herbs tied in cords of palm fiber. He speaks to your wife in that same quiet tone. Then to you, asking if the pain has shifted, if the fever has loosened its hold. You shake your head, for it has not. If anything, it grips tighter, a serpent coiling deeper inside. He begins his work. First, a mixture of wine and natron, bitter on your tongue, burning as it slides down. Then, a poultice of crushed garlic and onions pressed to your skin, the sting biting where it touches raw flesh. The smell fills the room, sharp and suffocating. You breathe through your mouth, shallow, your chest aching with each rise and fall. He chants as he works, calling not only on skill, but on the favor of the gods. Thoth for wisdom, Sekhmet for strength, Serket to drive out the poison. Each word feels like a thread cast towards something unseen, something vast and indifferent. Outside, life continues. You hear it faintly through the haze, the creak of a shadoof lifting water to the fields, the rhythmic slap of wet clay as a neighbor repairs the wall of his house. Voices drift in, laughing, bargaining over baskets of figs. Children shout as they chase one another across the dust. The world moves on, indifferent to the slow unraveling of your strength. The physician lingers long after, his brow furrowed beneath the heavy paint that rims his eyes. He leaves charms, amulets of green stone and carnelian strung on flax cord, a wax figure meant to draw sickness from flesh. Your wife ties them near your bed, her fingers trembling as she knots the cords. You feel their weight in the air, though not in your body. The fever holds fast, And with it comes a new terror, the sense of something vast stirring at the edge of sight, like the shadow of wings unfurling in the dark. When evening falls, the wind rises from the river, carrying the scent of wet earth and lotus blooms. Lamps flicker again, their flames bending like reeds. Your breathing rasps loud in your ears, louder than the soft murmur of voices. The pain has spread now, curling through your limbs, sinking deep into bone. Your hands, when you lift them, seem strange, swollen, pale, as though they belong to another. Your wife lies near but does not sleep. She keeps the oil lamp lit, its glow painting her face in lines of gold and shadow. Sometimes she hums the old songs, the ones from festivals when the streets swelled with music and flowers, when life was a bright current sweeping all along with it. The sound cuts through the fever like a distant bell, fragile yet piercing, stirring something, longing or grief, you cannot tell which. Then comes the moment when breath catches, sharp as a blade. Your body stiffens, the room spins. The darkness surges like the Nile in flood, and for a heartbeat, you feel yourself slipping beneath it. Voices rise, your wife's cry, the physician's hurried chant. But they are far away, drowned by the roar in your ears. You claw toward the surface, lungs burning, heart thrumming like a trapped bird, and for an instant, light breaks through. The glimmer of the lamp, the gleam of resin on the physician's hands. Then silence. Not absence, but a thick stillness pressing from all sides. You float in it, weightless, senses dimming, until a voice, not theirs, not human, threads through the dark, a whisper shaped like breath against your skin. You cannot grasp the words, only the chill that follows them, sinking deep as the fever ever did. The voice fades, the light returns, harsh and blinding. You drag in air, raw and jagged, and the room crashes back around you. The mat beneath, the smell of garlic and oil, the low sob of your wife bent over your chest. You live, though you feel hollowed, carved by something vast and merciless. And as night deepens beyond the reed door, a thought takes root, small and cold, that what hunts you now is not only in the body, but in the shadow of the gods who walk where men cannot follow. The morning sun creeps across the wall in a pale stripe, but its warmth does not reach you. Your skin feels foreign, damp, cold in places, fever hot in others. Each breath scrapes your throat like sand, and the taste of old herbs still clings to your tongue, bitter and metallic. You hear the soft rasp of the quern as your wife grinds barley, though she works slower now, glancing toward you at every sound you make. The room smells of smoke and sickness, a sourness that seeps into the woven mat beneath you. You try to rise, if only to ease the stiffness in your back, but the effort sends pain knifing through your belly. Your hands clutch the edge of the mat, knuckles whitening, yet the strength drains before you can lift yourself. You slump again, the air trembling in your lungs. Once, such weakness would have shamed you, but now it fills you with something colder than shame, a hollow dread that coils deep and waits. Outside, voices stir as the village wakes. The bleating of goats mingles with the splash of water jars dipped at the well. You hear men calling to each other, their laughter bright and careless, and the faint clatter of pottery from a nearby courtyard. The world hums with its daily rhythm, but you no longer belong to it. It is as if you are sealed behind an invisible wall, your life narrowing to this single, stifling room. When the physician enters again, the smell of resin and incense floods the air. His linen is fresh, the folds sharp, yet the kohl about his eyes cannot hide the heaviness there. He kneels beside you, lays his hands on your brow and chest, and frowns at the heat that pulses beneath your skin. He speaks a formula as he works, words pressed into the air like beads on a string. Come forth, poison. Come forth, demon that hides in the blood. His voice is steady, but you catch the way it thins at the edges, as though hope frays beneath it. He orders your wife to heat water mixed with natron and honey. When it cools, he makes you swallow in slow, painful gulps, the sweetness thick and cloying, hiding a sting that burns all the way down. Then comes the knife, a sliver of bronze, its edge keen and cruel. He murmurs an offering to Serket, mistress of venom and healing, and draws a shallow cut along your forearm. Blood wells dark and sluggish, pooling in a small alabaster dish. The sight blurs before your eyes, but you sense the urgency in his hands as he smears the wound with crushed ochre and cedar oil, binding it tight with a strip of clean linen. When the task is done, he leaves behind a scroll inked with symbols your eyes cannot follow, though you know their weight. He sets charms upon the mat, small figurines of wax and faience, their shapes crude yet potent. One bears the head of a lion, jaws gaping in silent rage. Another is carved like a coiled serpent, its eyes painted in black. Your wife places them carefully, whispering prayers with each, her voice raw with sleeplessness. She touches your face, and her fingers tremble like leaves in a wind you cannot feel. The day drags in a slow, relentless current. Light thickens, then fades, and still the fever holds. You drift in and out of shallow dreams, visions blurred with smoke and water. Sometimes you see the river, wide and glimmering, its surface broken by the sleek curve of a crocodile's back. Other times, a hall of pillars stretching beyond sight, shadows spilling like ink between the columns. Voices echo there, deep and distant, their tones neither kind nor cruel, but vast, measuring, weighing. When you wake, lamps burn low, casting thin halos across the wall. Your wife hums again, a tune that falters often, as if she forgets the words she does not speak. Her shadow sways against the mud brick, long and thin as a reed. You reach for her, but your arm falls short, heavy as stone. She sees, and in an instant she is there, kneeling close, pressing cool water to your lips. It soothes for a moment, then turns bitter in your mouth. She does not speak of fear, but it hangs between you like the heat of the lamps. The night deepens. Outside, the wind stirs, rattling the reeds in the doorway. Somewhere, a jackal cries, its voice sharp and lonely under the moon. You close your eyes, and the sound follows you down into darkness. This time, the dreams are stronger. You stand on a shore of black water, the sky stretched taut and starless above. A single boat waits there, its prow carved like the head of a falcon. A figure stands at the stern, cloaked and silent, the blade of an oar glinting pale as bone. You do not know the words to speak, nor the coin to offer, only the weight of your own breath as you take the first step toward the waiting hull. But when your foot touches the plank, the voice returns, the same that brushed your thoughts before, soft as breath against the hollow of your ear. Its tone is neither promise nor threat, only the echo of something vast and patient. Not yet. You wake with a start, choking on air that feels too thin, too sharp. The lamp has burned low. Shadows crawl like ants across the wall. Your wife sleeps now, curled near the hearth, her face hidden in the crook of her arm. You listen to her, breathing, steady and human, and cling to the sound as though it were the last tether to a world that recedes more with every hour. The fever hums in your blood, and in its pulse you feel again that unseen presence, waiting, as the night closes in. The wind has changed. You sense it before you wake, a shift in the air like breath drawn through clenched teeth. The faint sweetness of lotus is gone, replaced by something harsher. Smoke and wet clay, the musk of bodies pressed too close. When your eyes open, The room swims in a dim amber glow. Dawn has barely touched the sky, yet the world beyond the doorway stirs in muffled voices, fragments of words that shiver against the silence within. Your wife is gone. For a moment, panic flares sharp and bright, cutting through the fever's haze. You turn your head, searching, though the motion sends pain scything through your neck. The mat where she slept is empty, the clay lamp cold, its wick curled like a black tongue. You drag air into your lungs, slow and harsh, and strain to listen. Then you hear it, her voice outside, low and tight, speaking quickly to someone whose reply you cannot catch. The words fall like pebbles into deep water, vanishing before you grasp their shape. Then, footsteps retreat, and the quiet swallows all. When she returns, her arms are full of reeds bound in cords and a jar sealed with a disk of mud. The reeds clatter as she kneels, and you see how her hands shake, though she tries to hide it. Her face is drawn, shadows pooled beneath her eyes like bruises. She avoids your gaze as she sets the bundle aside and breaks the seal on the jar. The smell hits you first, thick, sour, laced with the sharp tang of something burnt. She stirs the contents with a strip of palm fiber, murmuring as she works, her voice catching on the names of gods. Sekhmet, Great One, turn your face in mercy. Isis, Mother, here. You watch the liquid slosh, dark and viscous as pitch, clinging to the walls of the jar. The scent claws at your throat. When she lifts it toward you, you flinch, but her eyes hold yours now, bright with something that is not only fear, but a kind of brittle resolve. You drink because you cannot bear to see that light break. The taste is worse than before, acrid, bitter as old copper, coating your tongue like oil. Your stomach heaves, but her hands grip your shoulders, forcing the last of it down. When it is done, you collapse back, trembling, and her arms encircle you in a hold that feels like both a prayer and a farewell. The day crawls in fragments. Heat pools in the corners of the room, though the sun has barely risen. The air thick as if the walls themselves exhale fever. The pain in your belly coils tighter, a knot of iron twisting with every breath. Your limbs twitch without your will, and sweat streams in rivulets down your spine, soaking the mat until it clings like wet bark. Sometimes the light shatters into spears that pierce your eyes. Sometimes it dims so utterly you wonder if the lamps have gone out. Through it all, the fever hums, a low drone that beats in time with your heart. Voices blur at the edges of hearing. You think the physician returns, or perhaps you dream it. The rustle of linen, the chime of bronze amulets as they brush against skin. Fingers probe your abdomen, pressing deep until you gasp. A chant begins, thick with consonants, syllables rolling like river stones. Something cold drips onto your forehead, trailing down your temple to the hollow of your ear. The smell of resin swells, choking the air. Then hands lift you, turn you, bind you in linen that scratches like reeds. You do not know if this is treatment or preparation. When the haze thins, you lie alone. Shadows spill long across the floor, black pools stretching from the corners. The door hangs open, and beyond it, the sky bleeds orange, streaked with smoke from distant hearths. You hear the hiss of oil poured into a lamp. Then, the flare of flame. Your wife kneels beside you once more, her face lined with weariness, carved deep as hieroglyphs in stone. She presses a damp cloth to your lips, whispering your name like an offering to the silence that crouches between you. Night falls hard, pressing close. The air grows heavy, thick with the scent of incense that coils like snakes from the brazier near your feet. Shapes flicker at the edge of sight, shadows cast by the wavering flame, or something else, something that does not belong to this room. You try to speak, to ask if she sees them too, but the words splinter on your tongue. She does not look up. Her eyes fixed on the strip of linen she winds and unwinds around her fingers, as if that motion alone holds the world together. Sleep does not come. Instead, you drift in and out of a gray half-light where the walls breathe and the earth tilts beneath you. Once, you feel cool air against your face and realize the door has swung wide. You glimpse the sky, a narrow slice, thick with stars spilled like crushed glass. For a heartbeat, you imagine stepping into that vastness, the weight of your body falling away, the pain loosening its claws. But the vision fades, and you are left with the hum of your own pulse and the sense, stronger now, that something waits beyond the threshold, patient as stone, its gaze fixed on you. And as the lamps gutter low, a single thought takes shape, clear as the gleam of moonlight on the Nile. This sickness is not only of flesh, it is a summons, and its messenger is near. The night does not end. You lie listening to the low murmur of voices outside, drifting like smoke through the cracks in the reed door. Sometimes you catch a word: Sekhmet, ward, appease, and the sound of something dropped into a brazier, the hiss of resin spitting on coals. The air is thick enough to drink, choked with the smell of incense and the sour tang of sweat that clings to your skin. When you shift, even slightly, pain ripples through your belly like a knife dragged underwater. Your wife dozes near the hearth, her head resting on her knees. The flicker of the dying lamp paints her face in shifting light, shadows pooling under her cheekbones. You think of how she looked when you first saw her, on the banks of the river, the floodwaters bright against the fields, her laughter carrying on the wind. The memory feels thin now, a painted scene on brittle papyrus, ready to crack at the edges. When you close your eyes, the darkness swells like the river in flood. There is no peace in it. Shapes gather there, long-limbed, faceless, their forms twisting in the black. They do not move toward you. They wait, as if patience is the sharpest of their blades. You try to wrench free, to claw your way back to the dim safety of the room. But the dark clings, like pitch. Then, cutting through it, a sound rises, deep, rhythmic, like a drum muffled in sand. It beats in time with your pulse, and with every throb comes the sense of being measured, weighed, judged. You wake with a start, breath tearing your throat. The lamp is out. Only the faint silver of moonlight seeps through the reed mat, enough to show the curve of your wife's shoulder, the hollow of her spine. Beyond the door, silence stretches taut, broken only by the chirr of night insects and the far-off cry of a bird disturbed from sleep. You lie listening, and in that hush, the world feels fragile, as though one breath, yours, might shatter it. The fever has not broken. Your skin burns where it touches the mat, yet inside you coils a chill that gnaws at bone. You press a hand to your abdomen, and the flesh feels strange, swollen, tender as ripened fruit. A sour taste floods your mouth, and you turn to retch, but nothing comes. Only a hollow heave that leaves you gasping. Your throat is raw, your lips split, and when you lick them, the taste of salt and old blood fills your tongue. When dawn comes, it does so reluctantly, seeping pale through the doorway, like water through cracked stone. Your wife wakes with a start, her eyes wide, hair loose about her face. She touches your brow, then your chest, and you feel the tremor in her fingers. Without a word, she rises and slips outside. Through the haze in your mind, you hear her steps fade, then the low murmur of voices, hers and another, deeper, edged with something like weariness or warning. The physician returns with her. His arms are bare now, marked with streaks of oil and soot, his linen stained dark at the hem. He kneels beside you, his shadow falling long across your face, and begins to work without speaking. A strip of papyrus is pressed to your lips, smeared with honey and something bitter beneath. He mutters as you swallow, the words older than any you know, curling through the air like smoke. When the last syllable fades, he draws out a pouch of gray powder and scatters it into water, stirring until it clouds like silt in flood. He holds it to your mouth. You drink, gagging, but his hand does not release you until the bowl is empty. Then come the bindings. Linen strips steeped in resin and oil, wound tight about your belly, your chest, your limbs. The scent is thick, clinging, and beneath it lies something else. Metallic, sharp, like the tang of blood left too long in the sun. You lie still as the bands tighten, not from obedience, but because you cannot fight. Strength has gone from you like water poured on sand. When it is done, the physician presses an amulet into your wife's palm, a disc of green stone etched with the eye of Horus. Hang it above his head, he says, his voice low, and she does, her hands trembling as she knots the cord to the beam. The eye stares down at you, bright and unblinking, its lines catching the thin light that creeps through the doorway. The day passes in fragments. Heat builds, pressing against the walls until the air shimmers, though inside, you burns hotter still. Your mind drifts, untethered, slipping between waking and dreams that taste of copper and ash. Once, you think you feel cool water on your face, and open your eyes to find your wife bathing your brow with a damp cloth, her lips moving soundlessly. Another time, you see the physician's face looming close, his coal-lined eyes dark as river mud, and behind him something taller, something cloaked in shadow that bends without sound. Night comes again, sudden as a blade. The lamps flare, gutter, flare once more. Smoke curls along the ceiling like black fingers. Your wife sits beside you, her hands clasped tight, lips moving in a prayer you can no longer hear. The fever thrums, louder than her voice, louder than the crackle of the brazier, until it fills the world. And beneath it, steady as the pulse of the Nile, the whisper returns, not in words, but in a sound that is all breath and silence, promising nothing, asking nothing, only waiting. And you understand, with a clarity colder than death, you are not the only one in this room. The whisper lingers even when your eyes snap open, dry and stinging from the smoke. It does not vanish with waking. It threads through the hiss of oil in the lamp and the soft crackle of burning resin, as if the room itself hums with it. Shadows writhe on the walls like snakes, stretching long as the flame bends low. You blink hard, but they do not still. The fever turns everything fluid. Shapes, sounds, even the line between breath and prayer. Your wife sits where she always does now, near the hearth, but she is different in the wavering light. Her face seems carved, hollow where softness once lay, eyes rimmed with cold smudged dark by tears or sleeplessness. She is weaving something. Thin cords of flax wound into knots so tight they whiten her fingers. Each knot cinches like a heartbeat, quick and silent. When she notices you watching, her hands falter for an instant, then resume their rhythm. She does not speak. The physician has not returned since the last binding. Perhaps he cannot. Perhaps he will not. His absence presses like another weight on your chest, heavier than the bands of resin-soaked linen that cinch your ribs. You feel the oil seep into your skin, sticky, cloying, a second flesh layered over the one that betrays you. Beneath it, the fever seethes, molten, chewing marrow to ash. Each breath rattles, shallow and raw, and with every rise and fall, you sense how thin the thread has grown. Outside, the village moves in distant murmurs, the rush of feet to the fields, the lowing of cattle led to water, the clatter of jars hoisted from the well, sounds that once belonged to you, now strange as a tongue you cannot speak. Once, you were part of that rhythm, hands sunk in soil dark as the night Nile, sweat slick on your spine, laughter carried on the wind like chaff. Now you lie apart, listening as if through stone, the pulse of life muffled, receding. When the sun climbs high, heat spills into the room like molten copper. The walls sweat it, and the air grows thick, choking. Flies hum, drunk on the sweetness of spilled honey from yesterday's draft, their bodies glinting like shards of obsidian as they circle, dip, vanish. One lands on your cheek, and you lack the strength to brush it away. Its feet tickle the hollow beneath your eye, and the smallness of it, the weight of that fragile thing, crushes you more than any fever could. The hours bleed together. You drift in the shallows of sleep, slipping under, clawing back, each time certain you will not rise again. Dreams gnaw at the edges, visions of the black river under a sky empty of stars, of the falcon-proud boat waiting with its silent oarsman, his face hidden, his stillness heavier than stone. Each time you hear the whisper, closer now, curling like smoke around your bones. Not words, yet you understand. Not yet. Not here. It coils through you like a promise or a sentence deferred. You wake to darkness pierced by a single flame. The lamp flickers low, its oil nearly spent. Your wife crouches near, feeding slivers of wood to the brazier, though her hands shake so badly that one falls, sparking against the floor. She curses softly, a raw sound, then presses her palms to her eyes. You try to speak her name, but what escapes is a rasp, thin as wind through reeds. Still, she hears. Her head lifts slowly, and for an instant her eyes catch the light, a gleam wet as the river at flood. She comes to you, kneeling, and cradles your face in her hands. Her fingers smell of smoke and salt. She presses her forehead to yours, and in that touch lies every word she cannot speak. Then she rises and turns away, moving to the door. Her silhouette is black against the pale spill of moonlight beyond. You hear the creak of the reed mat as she lifts it, then the soft thud of her feet on the packed earth outside. The night air breathes in, cool and damp, laced with the scent of water and lotus from the far-off river. For a heartbeat, you imagine rising, following, tasting that sweetness on your tongue. But your body anchors you, heavy as clay, and you lie listening as her steps fade into the dark. Silence folds over the room, broken only by the hiss of the lamp. The shadows grow longer, bending until they seem to lean close, their edges rippling like reeds in wind. You stare at them, unblinking, until your eyes sting. And then, between one breath and the next, they shift. Not the shadows, not tricks of light. Something else moves there, slow, deliberate, unfolding like a coil of smoke. It towers where the wall should be, its shape fluid, its edges blurred as if the darkness itself had drawn breath. You cannot see its face, yet you feel its gaze. A weight, immense, pressing down until your lungs seize. The air thickens with the scent of resin, honey, and something colder, sharper. The tang of stone long buried, of earth where no roots grow. Your body will not move. Even the trembling of fever stills, as though it dares no longer defy what stands before you. The whisper rises again, threading through the silence, brushing your thoughts with fingers of ice. Not yet, but soon. The lamp gutters, flares, then dies. And in that moment, the darkness is no longer empty. The dark presses close when the lamp dies, thick and heavy. A weight that settles over your face and chest like another shroud. For a breath. 2. The silence is complete. No rustle from the hearth. No murmur of wind through the reed door. Only the drum of your pulse pounding in your ears. Then it comes again. The whisper. Not in the air, but in your bones. Sliding through marrow like water through silt. Not yet, but soon. You do not know if your eyes are open or closed. The blackness is the same either way. Yet shapes bloom within it, pale and shimmering like the skin of a fish just beneath the Nile's surface. At first they drift, slow and soundless. But then they gather, twisting, folding until they take form. Columns rising from nothing, vast and smooth as polished limestone. Between them yawns a hall so long its far end drowns in shadow. You lie at its threshold, though you do not remember walking. The air there is cold, tasting of stone and dust older than the flood. Light falls from nowhere, thin and gray, pooling like water across the floor etched with signs you cannot read. At the center stands a scale, massive, wrought of bronze, its arms glinting like the edge of a sickle under moonlight. On one pan rests a single feather, pale as dawn. The other hangs empty, waiting for what you know too well. A figure steps forward, slow, soundless, wrapped in linen the color of desert sand. Its face is masked in gold, features smooth and perfect as if carved by a hand that never knew flaw. Eyes of obsidian fix on you. Eyes that hold no anger, no mercy, only the stillness of a sky before storm. When it speaks, the voice does not break the air. It blooms inside your skull, vast and echoing. When the body fails, the heart is weighed. You try to speak, to ask if this is death, if this is the end. But your tongue cleaves to the roof of your mouth, and the words dissolve like salt in water. You can only kneel, though you do not remember bending, before the scale that waits. And as you lower your gaze, you see your own hands resting on your thighs, bound in strips of resin-darkened linen. The sight strikes you with a chill sharper than any fever. You are wrapped as the dead are wrapped. Then a cry shatters the hall. Thin, distant, but real. Not in this place. In the other, the one you left. It threads through the vision like light through cracks, tugging you backward. You hear it again, clearer now. Your wife's voice, breaking on your name. The hall fades, the columns bleed into shadow, and the scale dims to nothing as the world tilts and crashes around you. You wake on the mat, chest heaving, the taste of ash in your throat. The room swims in the dim glow of a rekindled lamp. Your wife crouches beside you, hair falling wild across her face, eyes wide and bright with terror. Her hands clutch your shoulders, shaking you as if to tear you back from some abyss. The cords of flax lie scattered at her knees, tangled and broken. Behind her, the brazier smolders low, its embers casting dull red light that licks the walls like tongues of blood. You try to speak, but your voice is no more than a rasp. She presses water to your lips, and it dribbles down your chin, soaking the bandages that bind your chest. The coolness is a mercy sharp enough to sting. She whispers your name again, over and over, like an incantation strong enough to drag you from death itself. When your breath steadies, she leans close, her forehead resting against yours. You feel the tremor in her body, the heat of her tears streaking your cheek. Then, in a voice raw with sleepless nights, she confesses what you already know. The physician will not return. He has done what can be done. The rest lies with the gods, or with what waits beyond them. The words settle like sand in your bones. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you see the hall again, vast and silent, the bronze arms of the scale gleaming in the dim. The whisper curls through the memory, patient as the river's pull. Not yet, but soon. Night stretches on, thick and endless. You drift, not into sleep, but into a fever dream of heat and shadow. Sometimes you feel your wife's hand in yours, her fingers cold despite the fire's glow. Sometimes you sense others in the room, presences that move without sound, shapes that bend like smoke in corners where the lamplight dies. When you try to look, they are gone, leaving only the faint scent of resin and something sharper, bitter as myrrh burned too long. Then comes the sound that drags you from the drift, the hollow thud of something striking the earth outside. Once, twice, a rhythm slow as a heartbeat. Voices murmur, low and urgent, though their words curl beyond your grasp. You hear the rustle of reeds, the scrape of wood, and then a silence heavy as stone. Your wife rises. The air stirs as she moves to the door. You want to call her back, but your mouth gapes useless, a cracked jar that holds no water. The reed mat lifts. Cool air breathes in, thick with the smell of damp earth and smoke. You glimpse her silhouette framed by the pale spill of moonlight, shoulders bowed, arms drawn tight around something small and heavy. She steps out without looking back, and the night swallows her. You lie, staring at the darkness where she stood, the silence around you swelling until it feels alive. Then, from that silence, the whisper stirs once more. Closer now, close enough to feel against your ear. The body fails. The heart remains. And with those words comes the certainty that what waits has begun to move. The air tastes of dust and resin when you wake again, though you cannot tell if hours have passed or days. The walls blur in the dimness, their mud brick seams wavering like reeds underwater. The lamp burns low on the hearth, its wick curled black, the oil nearly gone. Shadows cling to the corners like clotted blood. Your wife is not here. The absence strikes harder than fever. You try to lift your head, but it drags like stone on a rope. The linen binding your chest tightens with the effort, and you sink back, breath tearing your throat. The mat beneath you reeks of sweat, honey, and old sickness. It grips your skin when you shift, pulling hair and flesh as though it wishes to keep you there, pressed to the earth that will soon claim you. Outside, the night hums with sound. The croak of frogs near the canals, the distant cry of a water bird startled from the reeds, and beneath it all, something slower, heavier, a rhythm that does not belong to beasts or wind, a dragging sound, soft as silt slipping from a bank, yet steady. It comes, then fades, then comes again. You hold your breath to hear, and in the pause, the fever's whisper coils once more. Not yet, but soon. You turn your face toward the doorway. The reed mat stirs in the faint wind, pale threads catching what little moonlight seeps through. For a heartbeat, you think you see a shape beyond it. Tall, too still for a man, its outline shimmering like heat above black stone. Your eyes strain, watering, but when you blink, the shape is gone. Only the empty threshold gapes, and beyond it, the hiss of the night. When your wife returns, the sound of her steps startles you. Not because they are loud, but because they do not belong in this silence. She moves quickly, almost stumbling, a shadow spilling long behind her as she slips through the door. In her arms, she carries a jar, sealed with a knot of fresh clay. Her hands tremble as she sets it by the hearth, and in the weak lamplight, you see streaks of mud along her arms, dark as dried blood. She kneels beside you without a word. Her breath comes ragged, harsh as wind through reeds, and when she touches your face, her fingers are cold despite the heat that blazes in the room. You search her eyes, but what looks back is raw, fear stripped of all its masks. Before you can shape a question, she breaks the seal on the jar. The scent surges out, bitter and sharp, laced with something sweet that turns the stomach. From it, she draws a pulp of herbs crushed with honey and dark wine, thick as river mud. Her hands shake as she lifts it to your lips. You gag at the first taste, but she pleads with her eyes. And so you swallow, though bile claws your throat. The mixture burns as it slides down, a fire that coils with the fever already devouring you. She wipes your mouth with the edge of her linen, murmuring prayers under her breath, old words rasped raw by desperation. Sekhmet, turn your wrath. Isis, spread your wings. Spare him, spare him. When it is done, she sits motionless for a long time, her hand resting on yours, though it feels small and far away. You watch her shadow sway against the wall, bending and lengthening as the lamp gutters. Each time the flame flares, the darkness behind it seems to pulse, as if something vast breathes just beyond the clay bricks. The heat swells higher. It fills your ears with a low roar, drowns the sound of the night beyond. Your sight blurs, and the room slips from you like a net torn loose in flood. You fall into the dark again, not like sleep, but like a plunge into water black as ink. And there it waits, the hall of columns, the floor etched with signs that glow faint and cold. The scale towers at its center, arms outstretched, the feather bright as bone in the gray light. The masked figure stands unmoving, gold face gleaming, eyes like obsidian wells. But now there is another presence, heavier, closer. It coils in the shadows beyond the pillars, vast as the flood, its breath a wind that stirs the dust at your feet. When it speaks, the sound is no longer a whisper, but a weight pressing from all sides. The body fails. The heart remains. Will it rise? Or will it sink? You want to cry out that you are not ready, that you were promised time, but the words do not come. The linen on your arms tightens like bands of stone. You feel the resin harden, locking flesh to bone, sealing what was yours into something that no longer belongs to you. Then, another sound, faint, far, a voice threading through the roar, your wife, calling your name. It tugs at you like a cord tied to your ribs, pulling you backward, dragging you toward the narrow doorway of the world. You lurch, stumble, fall, and wake choking, the room flaring back like a torch thrust into darkness. Your wife bends over you, her hands slick with something dark. Blood? No. The color is wrong. Too black. Too thick. She wipes it from your mouth with her sleeve, whispering broken prayers as tears streak her cheeks. The smell clings to you, bitter and sweet, like the breath of something long buried. In the corner, the jar lies shattered, its contents smeared across the floor like spilled shadow. And in that dark slickness, shapes shimmer, tiny, writhing, as if the darkness itself is alive and hungry. You try to speak, to warn her, but the words tangle and break. Your throat holds only a rasp, dry as desert wind. She does not notice. She only clutches your face and rocks you against her chest, as if her arms can keep the world from breaking. But the whisper rises again, curling through the fever, closer now than breath. Not yet, but soon. And this time, you know it does not speak only to you. The night does not pass. It swells like a tide, lapping against the edges of the room, drowning even the faint comfort of the hearth glow. The lamp flickers, flares, then gutters, painting the walls in erratic strokes of light that twist the shadows into long, grasping shapes. They cling to the corners like cobras poised to strike, and each time the flame dips low, you feel them lean closer, patient and unblinking. You hear your wife's breath before you see her. It rasps quick and shallow, the sound of a reed pipe broken at the stem. She crouches by the shattered jar, gathering its shards with trembling fingers. Resin and honey smear her hands, glistening black in the dying lamplight. When she moves, the fragments chime softly, brittle notes breaking the silence like thin ice. She does not look at you. Not yet. Her shoulders shake with a rhythm she tries to hide. And in the dimness, you see the streak of clay across her cheek like a bruise. You try to call her name, but what escapes your lips is no voice. Only a rasp, dry and cracked, like wind hissing through desert stones. Still, the sound makes her flinch. Her head jerks up, and for an instant your eyes meet. What you see there is raw as an open wound. Terror, yes, but something else behind it. Something harder, sharper, forged by days and nights of helpless watching. She crawls to you, the shards falling from her lap with a hollow clatter, and takes your hand in both of hers. Her skin is cold, slick with the dregs of the jar. It stains your bandages dark, seeping through the linen like spilled ink. "You will stay," she whispers, the words breaking against her teeth. "Do you hear me? You will stay." Her voice is not prayer now. It is a command hurled against the silence that has begun to breathe. You feel it moving in the room, coiling through the heat and smoke like a shadow too vast to name. Her words strike it, shatter like pottery, and fall. The fever drags you under again. You do not fall asleep. You drown. The room tilts and slides away, replaced by darkness that pulses like a living thing. It is the hall again, the endless colonnade stretching beyond sight, the air tasting of copper and dust. The scale waits at its center, gleaming in the gray light that has no source. But the masked figure is closer now, so near you see the fine etchings along the curve of its golden face, the faint reflection of your own hollow eyes mirrored in its obsidian stare. Its hands, long and linen-wrapped, rest upon the arms of the scale with a stillness that crushes thought. And not yet, it says, not with a voice, but with the weight of the air pressing into your skull. The words fall like stones into the marrow of your bones. But soon, the feather stirs where it lies, though there is no wind. And then something shifts in the darkness beyond the pillars. A shape uncoiling, vast as floodwater. Its breath a whisper that scrapes across your skin like grit. You sense hunger there, patient and endless. A mouth that opens not to devour flesh, but to drink what remains when flesh has failed. You turn to run, but the bindings drag like chains, the resin-stiffened linen biting into your limbs. You wrench free, tearing skin, and the smell of blood floods the air, sharp and hot. The masked figure does not move. The scale gleams brighter, the feather burning white as sun on water, and you know the weight will soon be yours. A hand seizes your arm, small, shaking, human. You lurch back into the room with a gasp that rips your throat raw. Your wife leans over you, her face slick with sweat and tears, her lips moving in frantic whispers you cannot untangle. Behind her, the lamp flares one last time, then dies, plunging the walls into black. Only the embers glow, dull as dying eyes, their light catching the glisten of resin smeared across the floor like a stain that will never wash. The silence after is heavy, pressed with something more than heat. You hear it in the stillness, the slow scrape, faint but clear, as if something drags across clay just beyond the doorway. Once, twice, pausing between each sound like a breath drawn deep. Your wife hears it too. Her head jerks toward the door, eyes wide, mouth parted, in a question she does not dare shape. The reed mat stirs in a wind that does not touch your skin. Then comes the voice. Not hers, not yours, not even sound, but weight sinking through the dark. The heart remains. Bring it forth. The embers flare red, spitting sparks that die before they fall. Your wife crushes your hand in hers, so hard the bones grind, But you cannot feel the pain. All you feel is the pull. Slow, inexorable, dragging through blood and sinew toward something vast and waiting. Your lips part. You do not mean to speak, but the words spill like oil from a cracked jar. It is here. The sound does not belong to you. It crawls from your throat, thick and low, and coils through the room like smoke. Your wife jerks back, horror slashing her face, and for the first time you see fear, not for you, but of you. Outside, the dragging stops. Silence stretches, taut as a bowstring. Then, soft as breath, the reed door bends inward, its fibers whispering against the frame. And you know that what waited in the dark has crossed the threshold. The reed mat lifts without a hand. Its fibers sway as though stirred by water, and the air beyond yawns black, starless. The smell arrives first, cold, metallic, edged with rot that does not belong to the living. It spills across the threshold like smoke, winding low, curling along the clay floor until it touches your bare feet. The chill bites deep, sinking into marrow, coiling up through bone like frost, climbing a reed stalk. Your wife does not move. She kneels frozen beside you, her hands gripping your arm so tightly the linen bites into flesh. Her breath rasps quick and shallow, louder than the silence that follows. You feel her tremor, as though it runs in your own blood. Yet you cannot turn to her. Your eyes fix on the door where the dark thickens, clotting until it bulges like a blister about to burst. It enters without sound. Not a man, not a beast. Something stretched between shapes, its edges shifting like heat above sand. It bends to pass through the door, though you know no wall could halt it. The glow of the dying embers slides across its surface without clinging, as if the light itself recoils. In its form you glimpse contradictions, limbs that are not limbs, a spine that arcs and melts, a face that flickers through masks of beast and man, and something older, deeper, faceless. Each blink remakes it, yet one thing does not change. The eyes, two pits of darkness, so absolute the mind scrapes against them like flint against stone. Your wife makes a sound then, soft, strangled, no louder than a reed whistle broken underfoot. She presses her forehead to your shoulder as if flesh could shield against what steps into the room. Her fingers claw at the linen binding your ribs as though she could tear you free of its weight. But you do not move. You cannot. The fever stills. The pain stills. Even the breath in your chest hangs suspended like a jar sealed in resin. All that moves is your heart, pounding slow and heavy, a drumbeat echoing in the hush. The thing tilts its head, not toward her, toward you. And when it does, the darkness bends with a white, stretching, shivering along the walls until the very air strains like papyrus pulled taut. You feel its gaze like hands pressing through flesh, parting muscle, sliding between bones to close around what beats inside. The bands of linen tighten, not by touch, but by will. Resin creaks, hard as stone, until your lungs seize and black specks bloom before your eyes. Then comes the voice. It does not break the air. It does not need to. It blooms inside your skull, like a root-splitting stone. The body fails. The heart remains. It must be weighed. The hall surges up around you, columns hewn from shadow, floor slick with symbols burning pale as frost. The scale looms at its center, bronze arms gleaming like sun on blades. The feather waits, still and perfect, its whiteness cruel against the dark. You stand, though you do not remember rising, your feet bare on the cold stone. Behind you yawns the black river, its surface unbroken, though something vast stirs beneath, and before you stands the masked figure, silent, patient, its gold face reflecting your hollow outline. You know what it wants. What it has always wanted. Your chest burns. You look down and see the linen split, resin cracking like a shell, and through it gleams the red pulse of your own heart. It beats slow, heavy, louder than the whisper that coils through the hall. Bring it forth. Hands that are not hands, your hands, reach inward, fingers closing around the slick heat, lifting it free. Pain roars, white and blinding, yet it feels distant, as if suffered by another. Blood sheets down your wrists, though even as it falls it darkens, thickens, hardens into black lumps that clatter like stones across the floor. The masked figure steps forward. Its arms rise. The scale tilts, bronze singing faint as wind through reeds. One pan holds the feather, still bright, unblemished. The other waits, empty, waiting for you. But then, another sound breaks through the hall, sharp as a reed flute cleaving silence. Your wife's voice. Not words, your name, hurled with a force that shakes the vision like a jar struck from a shelf. The columns waver, the floor splits, and the hall buckles as though drowned in flood. You plunge backward through blackness, clutching the heart that is not in your hands, falling until the hard sting of clay jolts your bones. You wake choking, the taste of iron flooding your mouth. The room flares back in shards, the hearth cold, the embers gray. Your wife crouched over you, her face raw with terror and tears. Her hands grip your cheeks, her nails biting like hooks as she shakes you again and again, as if to wrench you back from some abyss. Her voice rips the silence, hoarse, breaking, but fierce as a blow. Stay. Do you hear me? Stay. You drag in air, thin and harsh, each breath raking your throat. The fever still thrums, but beneath it runs something colder, slick as oil. A presence that did not leave when the vision shattered. It crouches still, just beyond the edge of sight, its weight bending the air, its hunger pressing like a hand against your ribs. You feel it linger, patient as stone, and in that patience lies a promise older than God's. Your wife presses her forehead to yours, sobbing into the stench of resin and blood. You want to tell her it is over, that you have returned. But you know the truth. The scale has been raised. The feather waits. And the heart, your heart, beats slower now. Each throb an echo fading down a hall you can no longer leave. Outside, the dragging starts again. Louder this time. Closer. The sound comes first. A weight sliding over earth, steady and slow, as if something drags a body too heavy for breath. It moves beyond the walls, circling, pausing, then scraping forward again, each pull louder than the last. Between strokes of silence, you hear the faint rattle of reeds bending, their hollow stalks clinking together like bones. Your wife stiffens against you. Her head lifts, her breath snagging in her throat. For a heartbeat, her fingers lock around your jaw as though she means to keep you from answering some unspoken call. Then, without a word, she rises, her knees cracking in the hush. She moves to the door, slow at first, then quicker, the sway of her linen skirts whispering against the floor. The reed mat stirs as she grips it, but not enough to lift. Not yet. Her body freezes there, framed in the dim gray bleed of dawn, every line of her rigid as carved stone. The dragging stops. Silence floods in, thick and absolute, until even the rasp of your own breath sounds too loud. You strain to listen, but the blood in your ears drowns everything, roaring like the flood. Then, sudden as a blade drawn from its sheath, a knock splits the stillness. Not loud, soft, almost delicate, the hollow tap of wood on clay. Once, twice, 3 times. Your wife reels back from the door as though struck. The reed mat sways under the breath of a wind that does not touch your skin. You see her hands clutching the frame, knuckles bloodless, the tendons straining like cords. She turns her head, and for the first time, her eyes meet yours in a look that holds no pretense, no prayer, only terror, stripped bare, wide and white and shining. The knock comes again, softer still, like a child's fingers brushing a jar. A voice follows, not spoken, not carried on air, but blooming cold inside your skull. It is time. The fever seizes you, wrenching your spine from the mat in a convulsion that tears a cry from your raw throat. Fire rips through your veins, clashing with a cold so deep it gnaws the marrow from your bones. You clutch your chest, as though to hold something in, but the linen bindings bite, and beneath them the flesh swells and throbs, pounding against the resin crust with frantic, failing blows. You hear the scales ringing. Not here. Not in this room, but far, far within. Bronze arms humming like struck strings. The hall unfurls before your eyes even as the walls of clay press around you. Columns rising like petrified reeds. Darkness slick as oil pooling between them. The feather gleams, pale and pitiless. And beside it, the empty pan yawns like a mouth that has waited too long. Your wife's hand seize your shoulders, dragging you back from the brink, her breath hot against your face, her voice breaking on words you cannot hold. Stay with me, by the river, by the gods. Stay. But the other voice drowns hers, rolling like floodwater through your skull. Bring it forth. Your fingers claw at the bindings. Resin cracks, sharp as splintered bone. And for an instant you see it. The heart. Your heart. Slick and gleaming in the dim. Beating a rhythm that matches the slow toll of something vast beyond the veil. You know you could lift it, lay it on the bronze, end the waiting. End the wait. The thought coils sweet as honey in your fevered blood. Then your wife strikes you, not hard. Her palm cracks against your cheek like a whip of reeds, sharp enough to startle breath into your lungs. Her sob follows, raw and torn. You will not leave me. Her face swims above you, hair wild, mouth slack with terror. Tears track the hollow of her cheeks, carving clean lines through the soot that smears her skin. She clutches you against her breast, her voice grinding low like stone dragged on stone, pouring every scrap of life into the words. I gave you the breath of my house, the strength of my hands, the water of my jar. I will not give you to them. The hall trembles. The columns flicker. The feather dims. You feel the tug loosen, though only by a thread that frays with every pulse of your slowing heart. You fall back against the mat, gasping, ribs aching where the resin binds like iron bands. The fever hums on, low and relentless, and in its drone you hear the whisper curl once more, smooth as oil on water. Not yet, but soon. Your wife kneels rigid beside you, chest heaving, sweat slicking her temples. Her gaze rakes the shadows, darting to the door where the mat stirs as though under a breath not born of wind. The gray of dawn thickens there, heavy as smoke, and in its folds you glimpse a shape, vast, waiting, patient as the river at flood. The knocking does not come again. It no longer needs to, because what waits is already inside. The light of dawn seeps slow and sickly through the cracks, a pale smear against the reed mat that no longer hides what lingers beyond it. The air is still, yet heavy, pressing on your chest as though the sky itself leans through the low roof to crush the breath from your lungs. You feel it before you see it. The weight, the cold, the sense of a gaze that does not break even when your eyes close. Your wife has not moved. She kneels by the hearth, arms locked around her ribs, as if to hold her bones from splintering under what fills the room. Her lips move, shaping prayers that crumble before they reach her tongue. You know the names she calls: Sekhmet, Bastet, Isis. But the words fall hollow, brittle as dry reeds. The gods feel far tonight. Or perhaps they stand among the shadows, silent, unwilling to claim what another has already touched. The dragging sound comes again, not outside now, but inside, soft as cloth pulled over clay. You turn your head, slow as the setting sun, and see the mat lift without hands. The fibers sway, then slump to the floor like a severed limb. The doorway gapes, yawning black, though dawn swells beyond it, a smear of light that should break the dark, but does not. From that hollow spills a breath of air cold enough to bite, and in it coils a stench of rot, veined with sweetness, like lotus drowned in stagnant water. And then it enters. Not a shape. A shadow stretched too thin to bear a name, its edges bleeding into the walls like ink on wet papyrus. Yet you sense limbs, hidden within, the arch of a spine, the curve of something that leans closer each time the lamp guttered. Its face, if face it has, shifts as you stare, sliding through masks of beast and man, falcon beak flashing and gone, jackal snout splitting into something smooth and eyeless. The room bends around it, bricks bowing as if softened by heat, though the air slices your skin with cold. Your wife screams. Not loud, not long. A sound, strangled at birth, snatched from her throat before it can flee. Her body hurls forward, flinging itself between you and the shadow, arms spread, hair wild as river grass in storm. She snatches a shard of clay from the shattered jar, its edge jagged as a broken tooth, and brandishes it high. Her voice cracks like a whip of reeds. Leave him! The shadow stills. Its head tilts, slow and deliberate, until those pits, black, absolute, fix on her. The air quivers. Resin drips from the bindings at your chest, softening in the heat that pools where there should be none. You smell honey curdling to ash, herbs burning to bitter smoke. Your skin prickles, tightening against the bones as if the flesh knows it will not stay. The shard slips from her fingers. It clatters on the clay floor, a sound too small to matter. She staggers, knees folding like broken reeds, and crumples against your side. Her breath bursts ragged against your shoulder, hot and wet, and when her face lifts, her eyes blaze with a terror so naked it scrapes your soul raw. Do not go, she whispers, words fraying at the edges. By the river, by the gods, do not go. But the tug comes again, harder now, relentless as floodwater breaching banks. Your body arches, wrenched from the mat as though by unseen cords. The resin cracks, with a sound like splitting wood. Linen bursts, strips fluttering like pale snakes, and beneath them, your chest gleams raw, the pulse of life hammering wild beneath skin stretched thin as papyrus. Your wife claws at you, nails tearing, blood slicking her hands as she grips what the dark would claim. Her sob lashes your ear. Stay! The hall blooms around you in a rush of gray, columns rearing like petrified reeds, floor etched with signs that pulse faint and cold. The scale looms, its bronze arms outstretched, feather glimmering white as the crest of a wave. The masked figure waits, still as carved stone, gold face gleaming in a light that does not warm. And, behind it, the other presence stirs. Vast, formless, the breath of its hunger sweeping the hall in a wind that reeks of resin and blood. Bring it forth. The voice smashes through your skull, a weight that drives you to your knees. Your chest splits in silence, and your hands, traitors to will, reach inward, sinking through heat, through slickness, closing around what throbs like a drum in flood season. Pain lances white, then black, then nothing, as you lift the heart from its cage. Blood rains down your wrists in dark sheets, spattering the floor with clots that steam where they fall. The masked figure steps, The scale tilts. Bronze hums like struck string. The feather waits. The empty pan yawns. Then, your wife's cry cleaves the vision. Not your name this time, but a word older, rawer, torn from the root of her soul. A howl that rips the air like a net dragged through reeds. It drags you backward, jerking your hands from the weight they bear. The hall shatters, columns splinter, feather and bronze dissolve like dust in flood. You fall, slamming into the mat, choking on breath thick with smoke and honey and blood. Your wife sprawls across you, her body shaking with sobs that scald your skin. Her hair mats your mouth, salt and soot tangling your tongue. You clutch her. How? You do not know, for strength is gone, poured out like water in drought. But you feel her ribs grind under your grip. Feel her tears sink into the hollow of your throat. The shadow recoils, slowly, reluctantly, as if dragged backward through stone. It melts toward the door. Its limbs coil, fold, unspool, sliding like black silk along the walls. Its eyes, two pits swallowing every flicker of light, linger last, burning into yours with a promise colder than the tomb. Not yet. The mat falls. Silence slams shut. Dawn seeps thin through the doorway, pale as bone. You lie staring at the roof until the shapes of the rafters blur into nothing. Your wife's breath shudders against your chest, shallow, uneven. And beneath her weight, deep in the hollow where the heart should burn, a chill pools, a knowing colder than river silt. It will return. The day seeps in like smoke, pale and thin, curling along the clay walls, without warmth. Sunlight filters through the reed door, fractured into slivers, yet it does not chase the chill that clings to your bones. It is a dead light, the light of winter on a river that does not move. You feel it settle on your skin, and know it will not banish the shadow that breathed through the room before dawn. Your wife stirs against you, her cheek pressed to your chest, her breath ragged, shallow, uneven. For a moment, you wonder if she sleeps, but then her shoulders hitch, and a sob breaks loose. Quiet, muffled into the resin-stiff linen that binds you both in its bitter scent. She does not look up when you shift, slow as a reed swaying under still water. Her fingers knot in your arm, clinging as if she fears that loosening her grasp will let the darkness sweep you away. You want to speak, to tell her you remain, but the words stick, thick as pitch in your throat. The fever has scorched your tongue, leaving it heavy, clumsy, coated with a sourness that no water can wash away. When you swallow, the taste blooms sharp, metallic, like blood dried in the heat. She rises at last, unsteady, her knees creaking like boards under strain. Her face is hollow, eyes bruised with sleeplessness, hair matted with sweat. She moves like one wading through floodwater, slow, dragging each breath as though the air itself resists her. At the hearth, she kneels to coax flame from the embers, striking flint until sparks leap and die, before one catches on a curl of dry reed. Smoke coils upward, sharp and stinging, and the bitter tang of burning resin thickens the room until your head swims. When the fire breathes again, she sets a jar near the coals. Its clay belly bulges, cracked at the rim, the seal broken and smeared with honey blackened by time. You know what waits inside. The pulp of herbs ground with wine, dark as Nile silt, clotted with something that smells of death disguised as healing. Your stomach clenches not in hunger, but in revolt. The last draft still scalds your throat, its ghost curling through your blood, whispering in the fever's voice. Not yet, but soon. She stirs the mixture with a sliver of palm rib, her hands shaking so hard the liquid laps against the rim. Each tremor flings drops onto the clay, where they bead like ink on stone. When she brings the jar to your lips, her eyes lock on yours, and for an instant, the mask of strength shatters. What stares back is raw, flayed, clinging to hope by threads frayed to nothing. You drink because her gaze demands it, because to refuse would break her more than death could break you. The taste slams into you, bitter as wormwood, sour as bile. It burns down the throat like a rope dragged through fire. After, she wipes your mouth with a strip of linen, fingers trembling, and presses her forehead to yours. Her breath shudders in and out, salt tears streaking her cheeks, smearing soot across your skin. She whispers against your ear. Not prayers now, but fragments of memory, shards of the life you shared before this darkness settled. She speaks of the river's laughter in flood season, of figs warm from the sun, of nights when the stars lay so thick on the black that the sky seemed sown with seed. Each word claws at your heart like a hook, dragging you toward a world that feels farther than the duat itself. But even as she speaks, you feel the pull again. Not gentle now. A wrenching, a hand of iron closing around the cord that tethers flesh to breath. The fever flares, white and searing, blistering thought, peeling back the thin skin of the world. The room melts, running like wax under a flame, and through its dripping frame rises the hall. Columns etched with glyphs that writhe like living snakes, their coils tightening as you stumble between them. The scale looms ahead, bronze arms outstretched, the feather glimmering pale as frost. Beside it waits the masked figure, gold face gleaming, eyes two pits, deep enough to drown suns. You feel your chest tear without sound, linen splitting, resin cracking like old bone. Heat gushes outward in a flood of red, steaming where it strikes the cold stone floor. Your heart writhes in your hands, slick and heavy, beating a drum song that echoes through the hall. You stagger toward the scale because there is no path but forward, no choice but to lay the weight down and let the feather judge. Bring it forth. The command crashes through you like a chisel splitting granite. You lift the heart, crimson arcing, and lower it toward the yawning pan. And wrench back, choking, the hall shattering like a pot flung from a roof. The room slams in around you, clay walls streaked with soot, the hearth hissing as resin bubbles in the heat. Your wife's scream raking the silence raw. Her arms clamp your shoulders, nails tearing linen, blood hot between her fingers. "No!" she sobs, voice breaking like river ice in thaw. "Do not let them have you." You collapse into her grasp, your breath tearing in ragged gusts, the bandages slick and stinking with sweat and blood. Her tears rain on your face, salt cutting through the bitterness that clogs your mouth. You clutch her with what strength remains, the cords of your arms trembling, bones humming like struck reeds. For a moment, the shadow recedes, sliding back through the cracks, dragging its hunger like a net empty for now. But in the silence that follows, you hear it still, the whisper coiling in the marrow of your bones, patient as silt settling in floodwater. Not yet, but soon. And you know the truth that sears colder than the fever's fire. The scale waits, the feather gleams, and next time, no cry, no prayer, no love will tear you from its shadow. Outside, the sun climbs, pale as a dying flame. Yet in its light, the darkness crouches still. The day crawls across the walls like a crippled beetle, dragging its broken shadow through the narrow shaft of light that leaks beneath the reed mat. You measure time in its slow advance, though each blink smears it into haze. The fever coils tighter, heat blooming through marrow like molten copper poured into bone. Your chest heaves against the bindings, each breath a rasp like stone scraped on stone. And still the weight does not ease. Your wife moves in fragments, as if the air resists her limbs. Her steps leave dark crescents on the clay floor where water dripped from the rag she pressed to your brow. She wrings it now, hands red with the strain, water pattering into a jar whose belly gleams dull as old bronze in the hearth's glow. The fire sulks low, its light licking the edges of the room in tongues of ash gray. Resin fumes cling to the walls, bitter and cloying, clotted in your throat until every gasp scalds like smoke. When she turns, her face bears no mask now. The years carved into her cheeks overnight. The skin hangs loose, lips cracked, eyes rimmed dark like the kohl worn by mourners. She does not speak. What words remain when the gods have sealed their ears? Yet her silence is louder than wails, heavy as stone on your chest. She kneels, presses the rag to your lips, coaxing water past teeth that chatter despite the heat wringing your flesh. It tastes of copper and dust. And, in its trail, rises the phantom sweetness of honey turned black in jars that wait for tombs. You drift. The walls soften, bending like reeds under a wind that blows only in your skull. The hearth stretches into a brazier tall as a column, flames licking glyphs carved deep into the stone floor. The room lengthens, widens, collapses into the hall that waits behind every blink. A corridor carved from night, pillars rearing like the bones of giants. Shadows pool between them, thick and slick as oil. You hear the scales before you see them, a drone like bronze humming low, a sound that claws marrow and threads it on wire. Then it stands before you. The scale, vast, its arms outstretched like a falcon's wings, one pan cradling the feather bright as frost, the other yawning, hungry, its rim dark with centuries of hearts laid down and weighed. Beside it, the masked figure, still as death carved in gold, its linen-bound hands resting on the beam as though it holds the law of gods in fingers that have never known flesh. The air shivers with a voice that is not sound, but wait. It is time. You stumble forward, ribs splitting under the pull. Resin cracks like dry bark. Linen peels in curling strips. Your chest gapes, red and raw, and through the wound thrusts the thing that once was heart, beating slow, thick pulses that spatter the floor in arcs of black. You clutch it, slick and writhing, and lift it high as though the gesture were yours to choose. The whisper curls like smoke through your skull. Bring it forth. The bronze pan gleams. The feather glows. Your arms tremble with the weight that should be nothing at all. You lower it, inch by inch, the darkness swelling like floodwaters against the walls, and tear backward, choking on air that tastes of ash. The hall rips like papyrus under a knife, and the clay walls slam in around you. You sprawl on the mat, gasping, sweat hissing where it spatters the hearthstones. Your wife hovers above, her nails raking your cheeks, dragging you raw into the world. Her cry shakes the room. Stay! She crushes your head to her breast, rocking, her tears scalding your temples. The words she spits now are not prayers, but curses hurled at gods, who squat fat and deaf in their gilded shrines. Her voice breaks and mends and breaks again, as she bargains with shadows that do not trade. You feel her nails bite, drawing blood that threads down your neck like ink on reed parchment. Pain roots you in the body, but barely. Beneath it, the pull hums on, deep as a riverbed current. The room sways, light dimming though the hearth spits sparks. Smoke thickens, veiling the corners where shadows hunch like crouched beasts. You sense them breathe, hear the rasp of their hunger in the scrape of reeds beyond the door. The mat stirs, not with wind, for no wind creeps under its hem, but with the slow swell of something vast pressing against the world's thin skin. Your wife whirls toward it, snatching the clay shard from where it crouched in dust. Her hand shakes, but the blade gleams, its edge ragged as a crocodile's tooth. She plants herself before the door, legs braced, linen clinging in dark tides to her calves. The ember light strikes her profile sharp as a carving on tombstone. A figure etched for war, though her flesh is soft and will break like any reed when the flood tears through. The silence stretches, taut as a bowstring. Then, from beyond the mat, comes the voice. Not loud, not even sound, but thick as silt clogging the lungs. It is time. The reed door bows inward, fibers creaking like ribs under strain. The room sags with a weight that presses smoke flat to the floor, grinding your breath to dust. And in that crushing hush, you hear the scales toll once more. Bronze, singing a dirge for hearts, yet warm. Your wife hurls a cry raw as flayed flesh and raises the shard high. The mat splits down the middle like skin under a blade. And what waits steps through. The mat falls in two ragged halves, swaying like torn sails. Beyond it, the dawn bleeds pale across the earth, but the light falters at the threshold as though afraid to follow what enters. A chill pours through the gap, thick as water, sluicing over the clay floor in waves that gnaw the heat from the hearth. Flames sputter, coil inward, then bow low, their light smothered in a fog of resin smoke that tastes of rot and honey gone black. It steps in without sound. At first, it is only absence, a hollow tearing through the air, drinking the glow, the breath, the life from every corner. Then, as your eyes strain against the dark, it swells into shape, limbs unspooling, folding upon themselves like reeds twisted in flood. Its body bends wrong, too long in one moment, too narrow in the next, as if the world cannot hold its weight without buckling. The air warps around it, trembling like heat haze, but the cold it brings rakes your flesh to bone, and its face. There is no face, only a mask that flickers between beast and man, a jackal's muzzle dripping black ichor, a falcon's beak glinting pale as bone, a smooth blank oval from which two pits burn deeper than the river's bed. The sound comes after, the low drone, metallic, rising from nowhere and everywhere, vibrating the clay beneath your spine. Bronze hum, the song of scales calling across the gulf. It thrums in your marrow, a summons older than name, older than blood. You know it, as you know your breath, the measure that ends all things. Your wife does not falter. She stands before the rift of dawn, the shard raised high, its jagged edge slick with the smear of resin and old blood. Her arms quake. Her breath hitches like a bowstring near breaking, yet her gaze holds steady, fixed on the dark as if will alone could cleave it in twain. Her voice tears free, raw, scalding the air. You will not take him. The shadow halts, or seems to. The edges of its form ripple, shivering like oil spread thin on water. The cold deepens until your teeth clack in your skull, until frost beads along the linen binding your ribs. And then, without haste, it leans forward, not toward her, toward you. The pressure slams your chest, pinning breath, crushing ribs until each gasp scrapes like blades in a narrow throat. The wound in your flesh yawns wide again, resin cracking, linen peeling back in curling strips to bear the red hollow beneath. You feel the cords that tether you strain and fray, fibers popping like threads torn from a loom. Your wife moves in a blur, a cry bursting from her as she flings herself between you and the void. The shard arcs, catching what passes for its flesh, if flesh it has. Sparks spit from the strike, white as molten salt, and for a breath the shadow reels, its form collapsing inward like a net drawn tight. The room shudders. Smoke whips wild. The hearthstone splits with a sound like ribs snapping under a great weight. She slashes again, and again, each blow ripping light from the dark like flint striking iron. Her arm glistens with blood, hers or yours or neither, and still she does not yield. But you feel it even as she fights. The pull has not slackened. The whisper uncoils through the roar, silk soft, yet sharper than any blade. It is time. The body fails. The heart remains. The hall blooms behind your eyes, sudden and vast. Columns rear like pillars of ash. The floor glows with glyphs pulsing in time to your faltering breath. The scale waits, its bronze beam quivering under a weight it does not yet bear. The feather gleams, cruel in its stillness, and beside it the masked figure lifts its head, gold flashing like a sun that burns, but does not warm. Its hands rise, beckoning. Shadows surge at its back like a tide. Your knees hit stone. Your chest yawns wide. Between your hands writhes the heart, hot and slick, pulsing slow as silted water. Each beat a hammer tolling doom. You stagger toward the scale, muscles shrieking, vision reeling under a weight that should weigh nothing. The voice floods the hall. Bring it forth. End the measure. Your arms tremble. Bronze yawns. The feather glows. Then, another cry cleaves the dark. Not in the hall. Here. Your name, spat like blood from a throat raw with fire. It drags you backward, ripping the vision like linen wrenched from a corpse. You fall through blackness, slam into clay that jars bone, and wake to a world soaked in red. Your wife kneels over you, her chest heaving, her arm streaked scarlet to the elbow. The shard lies shattered in her fist, its edge dulled by blows struck against what bleeds no blood. Behind her, the reed mat writhes on the floor like a thing alive, torn to ribbons by a wind that should not blow. The shadow reels near the doorway, its form unraveling in streams of smoke that seethe and knot, and spill like ink across water. But its eyes, those pits of night, burn steady, fixed on you. Your wife slams both palms against your chest, forcing breath back into lungs that will not draw. Her voice breaks, splintering into sobs that rasp like sand under flood. Stay. By the gods. Stay. You choke, cough, spit blackness that reeks of resin and bile. Your vision swims. The shadow bows, folding like a reed under weight, then seeps backward through the threshold, a tide drawn out to sea. Its whisper slithers through the silence, soft as the hiss of silt sliding in the Nile's depth. Not yet, but soon. Then it is gone. The light staggers in, thin as gruel, spilling over walls streaked with soot and blood. The fire gutters, licking low as a dying tongue. Your wife collapses across you, her breath rasping hot and wet against your throat. Her tears soaking the bandages that bind what should hold no more. But you feel it even now. The weight in the marrow, the pull in the hollow where the heart hammers on. And beneath your wife's sobs, beneath the hiss of the hearth, the scales hum faint and low, a bronze dirge thrumming through the bones of the earth. The measure is not ended. The sun climbs, pale as bone, spilling its thin light through the torn reed mat. It drips across the floor in ragged bands, bright on dust but failing to warm the air. The cold lingers, clinging like the scent of resin burned too long, sweet and rancid at once. Your breath ghosts before your eyes, though the hearth still smolders. Smoke curls upward, trailing into cracks in the roof like threads drawn into some unseen loom. Your wife lies sprawled beside you, her face pressed against your ribs. Her hair clings in damp strands, blackened with soot, and her arms lock around your waist as though her bones alone could bar the door against what stalked the threshold. Her body trembles, though whether from cold or exhaustion, you cannot tell. You shift, slow, each movement scraping fire through your chest, and press a palm to her shoulder. Her skin burns against your fingers, slick with sweat. At your touch, she stirs, lifting her head with a jerk. Her eyes, gods, her eyes, they are wild, rimmed red, the coal smudged into bruises. Tears crust her lashes, streaked with ash. She stares as though seeing you through a haze of broken nights, searching for proof that you remain tethered to the flesh and not dragged into the black hole yawning behind every breath. When she speaks, her voice cracks like pottery fired too thin. You are here. The words scrape raw from her throat, half curse, half prayer. Her hands cup your face, trembling, thumbs tracing the salt crust at your temples. You try to answer, but sound deserts you. Only a croak escapes, thick with phlegm and the bitter ghost of herbs. She hushes you, pressing her brow to yours, breath shuddering like reeds in wind. Then she rises, swaying like a drunk on Nile mud, and staggers to the hearth. You watch her kneel, coax the embers to life, feed them slivers of dried palm. Sparks leap like fireflies, winking before they die. From a corner she drags a small chest bound in strips of leather, its surface scarred with stains dark as river silt. She wrenches it open, tearing cords with teeth when her fingers fail, and spills its guts across the clay. Jars crusted with pitch, coils of flax cord, bundles of herbs brittle as old bones. Her hands seize one jar at random, cracking the seal with a stone. The stench slaps the air. Wine soured into vinegar, steeped with garlic, pounded with onion and ground copper. It is medicine, yes, but reeks of tombs where oils curdle on the dead. She mixes without measure, without thought, her fingers clawing through powders, her breath whistling between clenched teeth. The brew she pours into a clay bowl gleams black as bitumen, streaked with veils of oil that shimmer like scales in the fire's guttering glow. She lifts it toward you, arms shaking so hard the liquid laps the rim. You gag before it touches your lips, the stench crawling down your throat like worms. But her eyes fix on yours, fever bright, and you drink because to refuse would break her, and because some sliver of you still claws for life, though the pull hums louder with each heartbeat. It hits your gut like molten stone. You convulse, bile clawing your throat, but she grips your jaw, forcing the draft down until the last black thread slides past your teeth. When it is done, you sag back, chest heaving, limbs shuddering as the heat floods your veins. The room reels, spinning like a potter's wheel gone mad. Smoke thickens, clouding the air, veiling your wife's face until she seems carved from shadow. And then the walls melt. They sag inward, ripple outward, collapse into the gray vastness you know too well. Columns thrust from black stone, carved with glyphs that writhe like serpents shedding skins. The floor glows with signs that pulse in time to your stuttering breath. The scale looms, bronze arms outstretched like wings stiff with centuries. The feather gleams, white as frost under moonlight. Beside it waits the masked figure, gold face cold as sun on desert bone, its eyes twin wells of night that drink all light and give none back. Bring it forth. The command lashes your mind, sharp as the crack of whips on flood barges. Your chest bursts, silent, resin splitting, linen curling like pale serpents. Heat gushes out in a tide of scarlet. You clutch the heart, slick and hammering, its rhythm stumbling now, faltering like oars that strike mud in shallow water. You lift it, arms quivering, black drops spattering your wrists, your elbows, hissing where they strike the stone. The bronze pan yawns wide, hungry. The feather waits, still and merciless. And from behind you rolls the other presence, the one that does not speak but devours silence, vast as night over desert, patient as a crocodile in silted depths. Its breath scours your nape, smelling of resin and rot, and its hunger hums like a swarm behind your ears. Your knees buckle, you stagger toward the scale, steps ringing on stone that is not stone. The whisper coils like smoke. End the measure. Lay it down. Your fingers stretch. The heart dangles, slick, slipping in the tremor of your grip. and a voice cleaves the hall. A scream flung like a spear across eternity, tearing the gray asunder. Your wife, howling not your name, but a word older, rawer, from a throat split with blood and fury. Her cry hurls you backward, wrenching the heart from your hands. The hall shatters like fired clay under flood. The dark implodes, ripping free in a gale of soot and silence. You slam into the mat, choking on breath that scalds your throat. Your wife straddles your chest, fists pounding the bandages, as if to hammer life back into a body that hangs by threads. Her hair lashes your face, wet with tears and sweat, stinking of smoke. Her voice splinters into sobs, curses, pleas, tangled like reeds in storm. But even as you clutch her, how? You do not know you feel it. The weight still crouching in the hollow where the heart beats slow and wrong. The pull deepening like undertow in flood season. And under the rasp of her breath, under the crackle of dying fire, the bronze hum tolls faint and cold. A song no prayer can still. The measure waits. The day falters like a sick bird, wings dragging against a sky the color of old linen. Light seeps through the torn reed mat in threads, too thin to mend the darkness clinging to the walls. The room reeks of resin burned bitter, of honey gone sour, of sweat and blood ground into clay. You lie sunk in the mat, as though it has grown roots through your spine. And, for the first time, you wonder if you have become part of the house. A weight for the earth to claim. Another husk pressed under Nile's silt. Your wife moves slowly now, her body bent as if age has poured through her bones overnight. Her arms are streaked with bruises, her hands cracked where linen rasped and cords burned. But still she works. You watch her crawl across the floor, gathering the shards of the broken jar into her skirt, fingers bleeding where edges bite. The sound of clay on clay clicks hollow in the silence, like teeth chattering under black water. She does not speak. The words have been stripped from her by nights of prayers, flung against walls that only breathe cold back. Instead, she hums low under her breath, the ghost of a harvest song, the kind sung when the threshing floor rang with grain and the air smelled of figs and dust. But now it wavers, breaking on sharp edges of breath, shivering into a sound that is not melody, but plea. You want to call her name. You want to tell her that you hear, that you are still tethered to this flesh by more than bone. But the voice that rises in your throat is not yours. It is the whisper curling in marrow, silk soft, cold as Nile water at midnight. It is time. Your chest clenches. The resin cracks with a sigh like mud drying under sun. Heat pools behind your ribs, thick as flood, pressing outward until the cords bite deep. You clutch at the mat, nails ripping fibers, but the pull threads through you like hooks dragged in slow rhythm. Your breath jerks short, shallow, and in its rasp you hear it. The hum of bronze tolling faint, patient, like the pulse of a drum beneath river silt. The hall blooms without warning. One blink, and the clay walls bow like reeds. The next, they stretch into pillars hewn from shadow, their shafts carved with signs that writhe like snakes shedding skins. The air hangs heavy, tasting of copper and myrrh gone rancid, and from the gulf ahead glimmers the scale. Vast, its beam outstretched, like wings frozen in mid-flight. One pan cradles the feather, pale and pitiless. The other yawns empty, rim gleaming dark as wet stone. The masked figure waits beside it, gold face gleaming cold, eyes two sockets swallowing all light, and behind it, the greater shadow coils, shapeless yet immense, its presence pressing the floor flat, wringing the air like cloth. You cannot see its form, only the swell of hunger bending the space it fills, the hush it drags across the hall like a black tide. Bring it forth. The command bruises your mind, heavy as millstones grinding grain. Your chest bursts without sound, a red mouth gaping wide. Linen peels in pale ribbons, resin splitting into shards that rain like black hail across stone that is not stone. Through the wound thrusts the thing that was your heart, hammering slow and thick, its rhythm faltering like oars striking mud. Blood streams down your arms in ropes that hiss where they strike the floor, curling into glyphs that squirm and smoke. You clutch the heart. Its heat scalds your palms. Its slick pulse thrums against bone. You stagger forward, each step ringing hollow, the stone trembling with a hum that threads your bones like a net. The scale looms nearer, bronze yawning, feather gleaming like a crescent moon carved from ice. Your arms lift, though the weight drags them down as if the heart were hewn from stone. The whisper coils close, sweet as honey rotting in heat. End the measure. Lay it down. You lower the heart, trembling. The bronze pan waits, lips curved like a jackal's grin. Shadows stretch long across the floor, clawing at your ankles, coiling up your calves. You feel them bite. Cold teeth of smoke, grinding deeper with every inch the heart sinks. And then, the cry slams through the hall like a wave smashing levees. A howl flung raw from a throat scraped hollow. Your wife's voice, riven with blood and salt, cleaving the dark in shards of sound. It strikes the scales. It shatters the hush. It cracks the pillars to dust. The hall reels, the floor buckling underfoot, and you are hurled backward, clutching a heart that sears like molten ore. Shadows peel away in strips, screaming without sound, sucked into a gulf that swallows all light. Clay walls crash back. The roof bows low, smoke corkscrewing from the hearth as if clawing for sky. You sprawl on the mat, ribs grinding, throat scalded raw. Your wife kneels over you, her body a cage of bone and sinew shielding what remains. Blood streaks her cheeks like war paint, her eyes, two coals, burning with a fire the gods themselves might fear. Her hands hammer your chest in frantic rhythm, nails splitting, palms slick with resin and black gore. "Stay!" she spits, voice cracking like storm-torn reeds. "Stay!" You choke on air that tastes of soot and iron. You clutch her wrists, not in strength but in surrender, the last tether to a world fraying at its edges. Behind her, the doorway yawns black, though dawn crawls beyond, a slit of pale bleeding across the floor. In that pallid light, the torn mat stirs, slow as breath drawn in sleep, and from the hollow beyond creeps the whisper, soft, certain, coiling through marrow with the patience of silt settling after flood. Not yet, but soon. Your wife crushes your face to her breast, rocking, sobbing, her tears hot against your temples. But you lie still, staring into the dark behind her ribs, and feel it there. Deep, deep. The weight crouching, the hunger biding. The measure waits. The feather gleams. The sun climbs, though its light limps across the earth, pale and frail as milk spilled thin. It slants through the torn mat in crooked bars, striping the floor with bands of ash gray. The air reeks of smoke and bitter herbs, of copper and something fouler, rot curling sweet at the edges like fruit gone black in its skin. You breathe it in because you must, though each gasp scours your throat like sand dragged under flood. Your wife has not left your side. Her hands never still. They move in a tremor of purpose that teeters on the edge of madness, mixing, binding, smearing resin where linen frays, whispering prayers as if words were ropes to lash you to the clay. Her face is hollow now, cheeks grooved with salt where tears carved their channels, lips cracked and blackened with soot. But her eyes, by the gods, her eyes burn yet, twin embers guttering low, fierce in their refusal to die. You try to speak, to tell her you hear the hum still thrumming in your bones, that the hall squats behind every blink like a jackal waiting in reeds. But your tongue is lead. Sound deserts you, save for the ragged hiss of breath leaking through clenched teeth. She hushes it with fingers slick with honey and blood, pressing them to your lips, her voice breaking on words that taste of ash. Stay, stay with me. Her hair brushes your cheek, damp and stinking of resin smoke. You close your eyes against it, and the dark rushes in like a tide. The hall blossoms without warning. It rises swift as a storm-tearing sky, columns spearing up from gloom, their shafts carved with signs that writhe like eels in a net. Shadows kneel between them, bent-backed, faceless, 1,000 heads bowed under the weight of a silence older than the sun. The floor gleams wet, etched with lines that pulse in rhythm to your heart's slow pound. And there, always there, the scale waits, bronze arms outstretched, humming low, their sound a thread sawing through the last fibers of will. One pan cradles the feather, white as bone scoured clean. The other yawns dark, rim slick with centuries of hearts laid down to die. The masked figure looms beside it, linen draping limbs stiff as carved wood. Its face is gold, its eyes pits where light crawls in and never crawls out. Hands like rods of iron rise from the gloom, fingers curling in a gesture that calls, that claims. The voice does not speak. It falls, heavy as millstones, pressing thought flat. Bring it forth. End the measure. Your chest yawns wide, bursting with a sigh like river ice breaking under thaw. Linen peels in strips. Resin splits. Shards skittering like beetles across stone that glows with cold fire. Through the wound thrusts the heart, slick and hammering. Its beat slow, stubborn, each throb flinging arcs of black that steam as they strike the floor. You clutch it. Heat gnaws your palms. Its pulse crawls up your arms, slamming marrow like oars against timbers. You stagger forward, knees grinding against glyphs that coil underfoot, their shapes hissing with the breath of serpents. The bronze pan waits, gleam cruel as noon sun on blades. The feather shines, a sliver of dawn that will never break. Shadows stretch, claws rasping stone, coiling up your shins, gnawing the meat of your calves with teeth of cold smoke. The hum swells. It fills the hall. It fills your skull. It drowns her voice, until it does not. A cry knifes the dark. Your name, flung raw, jagged, ragged from a throat split with blood and fire. It smashes the hush like a mallet shattering jars. Columns quake, glyphs shiver, the scale reels on its beam. The heart jerks in your grip, twisting like a fish hooked deep. You wrench back, falling, the bronze yawning black before your eyes as the hall implodes, stone folding like linen dragged into flood. The mat slams up beneath your spine. Smoke claws your lungs. Heat licks your cheeks, hissing from the hearth that spits sparks like fireflies dying in ash. Your wife sprawls over you, her nails raking your bandages, tearing, binding, tearing again, as though she could rip the darkness out with her bare hands. Her sob scalds your ear, a rasp that rasps like a knife over bone. Stay. By the gods, stay. You clutch her wrists. How, you do not know, for strength is silt in a dry jar. Your breath rakes thin, each gasp rasping like reeds split under flood. Her face looms through smoke, eyes wild, mouth slack with terror and rage. Her tears fall hot, streaking your cheeks with salt and soot. And then, the hush crawls back. It pools in the corners, black and slick, swallowing the red spit of embers, the ragged sobs, the wheeze of lungs straining to draw one more thread of air. The mat stirs where the light bleeds pale. The wind does not creep through the torn weave. You feel it before you hear it, the weight bending the room like clay under flood. The whisper slithers in after, soft as silk dragged across a blade. Not yet, but soon. Your wife jerks toward the doorway, the shard clenched in her fist, its edge dull with blood. Her breath rasps like a bellows beaten hollow, her chest heaving in stabs. You see the tremor in her knees, the quiver in her grip, and yet she stands. And you, staring past her into the black slit, yawning where the mat gapes, know this truth cold and bitter as Nile's silt in the throat. It does not come for you alone. The doorway gapes like a wound, its torn reed edges swaying in a breathless hush. Beyond it, the world pales under a sun that limps weakly across the sky. But the light halts at the threshold, as though some unseen veil bars its passage. What crouches there does not belong today. It has no shadow because it is shadow. Black poured thick, clotting the space between earth and sky. Your wife grips the shard in both hands now, its jagged edge trembling in the ember glow. Her linen clings in dark tides to her legs, torn where her knees struck the clay in prayer. Smoke curls around her, like the wrappings of a mummy dragged half-formed from the tomb. She plants her feet wide, though her limbs quake, though her breath rips from her throat in shreds. Her eyes are wild lamps guttering against a wind no hearth can break. And then it moves. No sound, no step, only a shift, a slow unwinding, like black silk drawn from a jar. The mat bows inward as if under floodwater, fibers creaking, dust trembling loose from the roof poles. Cold gushes through the rift in a wave that slaps your chest, slamming breath from lungs already scraped raw. The hearth flares once, spit sparks, then gutters, the light snuffed as if by unseen lips. What enters is not form, but force, edges folding and unfolding like a wing's shadow spilled across the floor. Its limbs, if limbs they are, arc and coil in motions that bruise the air. Where it leans, the walls bow, the clay sweating darkness that slithers in rivulets to pool thick as oil along the seams. And its face, God's, if face it owns, flickers through shapes, jackal jaws grinning wide, falcon beak hooked for rending, a mask smooth and blind yet staring deeper than eyes. But the pits remain, twin wells in which light drowns, black suns devouring all dawn. The whisper rides its breath, coiling soft as silk yet heavy as stone ground to powder. It is time. Your ribs cave inward under the weight. Linen bursts in curling strips. Resin peels like bark split in drought. The wound yawns wide, red and wet, pulsing to a rhythm that is not yours, but the hall's. The low drone swelling from nowhere. The bronze hum sawing through marrow, tolling measure after measure toward an end older than Nile sand. Your wife lunges. The shard arcs, whistling through smoke, biting black. Sparks spit like stars dragged from night. The shadow reels, folds, then lashes back. Its sweep shatters jars, scatters herbs in storms of dust. The chest splinters, cords whipping like snakes, clay shards hissing across the floor. Her cry tears the air raw. Half war cry, half curse flung like a net. And she strikes again. Again. Her arms ribbons of tendon and fury. Her nails clawing when the blade slips. But her blows find no flesh. They sink into absence that grips and grinds, bending bone under a hush thick as river silt. The shard wrenches from her grip, clattering away into dark. A coil of shadow whips her waist, flinging her against the wall. Clay cracks with a sound like a skull splitting on stone. She slumps, sliding, her breath bursting in a grunt that sears your ears like fire in dry reeds. You scream, though the sound is torn from your throat and swallowed whole, ground flat by the weight that clamps your chest. You thrash, nails raking linen, clawing clay, but the pull threads through you like cords dragged taut. The hall rears behind your eyes, sudden and vast. Columns spearing up in ranks of stone, their shafts slick with glyphs that twitch like worms in floodwater. Shadows kneel along the walls, heads bowed to the bronze beam looming at the hall's heart. The scale yawns wide. One pan cups the feather pale as frost, The other gapes dark, slick with the oil of centuries. The masked figure waits beside it, gold face cold as sun on tomb sand, its linen hands lifting in a gesture that splits thought like an adze through bone. The voice rolls, not in air but in blood. Bring it forth. And you do. The wound gapes, heat floods. The heart surges into your hands, slick and hammering, each beat a spasm that jerks your arms like cords. Blood ropes down your elbows, black as pitch in the gray light, hissing where it spatters glyphs that drink it like mouths. You stagger forward, knees grinding on stone that rings like bronze under flood. The scale looms, its hum swelling until it drowns the world, until it shakes the marrow to dust. End the measure. Lay it down. The pan yawns wide. The feather gleams like a shard of moon, merciless in its stillness. Shadows stretch long, clawing up your thighs, gnawing the last threads that tether you to clay, and breath, and love. And then, the cry rips through the hall. Not your name this time. A word older, deeper, flung raw from a throat split with blood and fire. It cleaves stone, shatters glyphs, whips shadows into tatters. The hall convulses, its pillars buckling, its roof sagging like reeds under storm. You wrench back, clutching the heart, the bronze beam yawning into black as the world implodes in a gale of dust and silence. Clay slams up. Smoke claws your lungs. The hearth spits sparks that die on blood pooling black around your hips. Your wife sprawls beside you, limbs twisted, breath rasping like a blade honed on bone. Her eyes flutter, white flickering through slits rimmed in soot. Her hand gropes, blind, seeking yours, and you seize it clutching with fingers stripped to sinew. The hush thickens. It crawls along the floor, slick, coiling through cracks, rising slow as Nile flood in moonlight. The whisper threads it, patient as silt. Not yet, but soon. And beneath its hiss, faint and cold, hums the bronze, singing low, a dirge that promises no dawn. The measure waits. The air hangs heavy as linen soaked in oil. The faint light leaking through the torn reed mat lies across the floor in pale strips. But even that meager glow falters, smothered by the haze thickening from the hearth. Smoke coils low, curling along the clay like snakes sluggish with cold. Each breath scorches your throat, yet chills your lung as if winter wind pours from the darkness still crouching in the doorway. Your wife stirs. The sound is soft, a whisper of flesh dragging across clay. Her fingers grope blindly until they find yours, curling like withered vines. Her grip is weak now, bloodless, yet the weight of it cleaves your heart sharper than any blade. When you turn your head, her face swims through the blur, cheeks blackened with soot, lashes crusted with salt, lips cracked to raw seams. One eye slits open, glimmering dull as bronze dulled by centuries. It fixes on you, holds for a breath, then shutters closed, as though every flicker of life is a coin wrung from the last hoard of strength. You whisper her name, or think you do. The sound snags in your chest, rising as nothing more than a hiss through clenched teeth. Still, her fingers twitch, clutching tighter, answering the cry you could not voice. You want to drag her back from that edge, bind her soul fast to this clay, but your arms lie slack, cords frayed, strength sluiced away like floodwater through broken dikes. Even now, the pull hums in your marrow, steady as the Nile in flood season, deep, relentless, patient. And then it comes again. That sound. Low, metallic, trembling through the bones of the earth. The hum of bronze. The song of the scales. It threads the hush like a net of soundless chords, sawing at the roots of thought, until all that remains is rhythm. Slow, grinding, the pulse of a law older than God's. You shut your eyes, But the darkness is no refuge. The hall swells behind your lids, sudden and vast, a gulf carved from night. It rises like a storm over desert, pillars thrusting up in ranks, their shafts slick with glyphs that writhe in the gloom like eels in black water. Shadows kneel between them, faceless, hunched, their backs bowed under centuries of silence. The floor gleams, wet, etched with lines that throb in time with the hammer inside your ribs. And there, at the hall's heart, the scale sprawls, bronze arms outstretched, feather gleaming white as bone scraped bare by vultures. The other pan yawns dark, rim slick with the oil of ages, lips gaping to drink the weight you bear. The masked figure waits beside it, linen shrouding limbs stiff as rods, gold face glimmering with a light that does not warm. Its eyes, gods, those eyes, two pits drinking every shred of breath, every cry, every name. Hands rise, rigid, command curling like cords of smoke through the marrow. Bring it forth. Your chest yawns wide. No sound escapes. Only the tear flesh splitting like clay jars under frost. Resin snaps in brittle shards. Linen bursts in ribbons pale as snakes shedding skins. Heat gouts red through the gap, steaming where it strikes stone that is not stone. The heart surges into your hands, slick and writhing, hammering in stumbles that jar your arms. Its pulse slams through your wrists, flogging the marrow like oars pounding water thick with silt. Blood ropes from your elbows, black under the gray glare, pooling in glyph-carved grooves that drink it down like thirsty mouths. You stagger forward. Knees crunch glyphs that squirm and spit sparks of cold fire. The bronze hum swells, droning like a swarm in your skull. The feather glints, cruel as noon sun on tomb sand. The other pan yawns, hunger throbbing from its rim. Shadows coil around your ankles, climbing, biting with teeth of smoke that rasp cold as knives honed on granite. Your arms lift though the weight drags them down, as if the heart were a stone hewn from the earth's core. The whisper winds closer, silk slack and sweet as honey rotting in jars. End the measure. Lay it down. Your fingers uncoil. The heart slides, heavy, slick, leaving smears black as pitch. It dips toward the pan, and a sound tears the dark. Not your name. A howl ripped raw from the root of being, older than prayer, older than words. It cleaves the hall like a chisel through granite, cracking pillars, flaying glyphs into dust. The scale reels on its beam, bronze screaming, feather flaring, white as salt and flame. Shadows scatter in squalls of soot. The hum convulses, then dies in a silence sharp as knives. You wrench back, clutching the heart to your breast. The hall collapses like a roof dragged under flood. Darkness implodes, sucking pillars, masks, bronze, and breath into a gulf that gulps the last flicker of light. Clay slams up under your spine. Smoke claws your lungs. The hearth spits sparks, ember light shivering like fever across the walls. Your wife sprawls where she fell, chest heaving shallow, her face a ruin of sweat and ash. Her eyes flutter, flicking white, then lock on you with a blaze that scorches the marrow. A look that binds, that brands, that says not yet though her lips cannot. Her hand crawls toward yours through a smear of blood, fingers clawed, nails cracked to the quick. You seize them. How? You do not know. And clutch as though your bones could lash her soul to this clay. Her breath rasps like reeds split in storm, spraying salt tears into the smoke between you. And from the doorway, where the mat gapes like a slit throat, the hush thickens, slick, coiling along the floor like Nile water seeping under floodgates. The whisper threads it, soft, certain, a weight draped on the root of thought. Not yet, but soon. The bronze hum returns, faint, pulsing deep as Earth's own heart. And you know with a clarity colder than death's breath. The measure waits still. The feather gleams. The pan yawns wide. And next time, No cry will tear you back. The day limps across the sky, dragging its broken light behind it like torn linen. Outside, the air hangs mute, as though even the ibis dare not cry, as though the reeds, crouching along the Nile, bow to something heavier than wind. Within these walls, the hush festers thick as pitch, clinging to every crack, swallowing even the whisper of your wife's breath. She kneels beside you still, her back bent, her hair a snarl of soot and sweat clinging to her nape. Blood clots dark along her forearms where shards bit deep. Her fingers, gods, her fingers, are raw, the nails ripped, the flesh split to weeping seams. Yet they do not rest. They flit and fumble like moth wings over your chest, tugging at linen blackened with resin and blood, winding fresh cords where the old gape loose. Her mouth moves and mutters too hoarse to name. Prayers, curses, scraps of harvest. Songs torn from their roots, flung into the dark like seed on drought-cracked clay. The hearth sulks low. Flames crouch in the ash, their light guttering in thin breaths that throw the walls into jerks and shudders, as though shadows strain to slip their leash. Resin smokes bitter from the pot, writhing in threads that knot in the rafters like black veins. Its stink rasps your throat, stinging tears from eyes already filmed by fever. You drink the reek because you must, though it scalds like wine steeped with salt and rot. And under it all, the hum seeps back, faint at first, a murmur worming through the marrow, but swelling with every pulse until your ribs thrum like plucked strings. It tolls low, bronze grinding on bronze, its song coiled tight around a law that does not bend. You clench your teeth, yet feel it sawing behind the bone, dragging the world's skin thin. Your wife does not hear, cannot, for it threads only the blood, but something in her stiffens, as if some shiver of it ghosts her flesh. Her head jerks toward the mat torn half from its frame, where pale light bleeds like pus from a wound. Her breath falters, then shreds. You taste her fear before you see its shape. The reed mat lifts without wind. Its fibers twitch like snakes struck with irons. Beyond it yawns the world, but not the world you knew. The day falters there, strangled in a dusk that should not fall. Shadows steep in folds, black on black, pooling into a bulk that swells until the doorway sags like clay under flood. Cold sluices in, slick as water, drawn from a tomb jar, lapping your ankles, crawling up calves in ropes that bite. Your teeth chatter, though sweat boils down your spine. And then it comes, not walking, not gliding, simply there, like night clotted in the lungs, like absence poured into a mold that never cooled. Its edges ripple, folding in and out as though the world gags on the shape it chews. Masks flicker across its face. Jackal, falcon, lion, splintering like shards struck from bronze, until none remain, and only a void stares, twin pits yawning wider than death. The hush it drags bruises the air, ringing sound to pulp. The hearth flares once, spit sparks that gutter before they fall. Then, darkness swells, thick as resin molten in flood heat. Your wife rises, her knees wobble. Her breath rasps like saw teeth through green wood. Blood dribbles down her thigh where linen gapes, glimmering black in the embers spit. Yet she stands. Gods, she stands, snatching the shard from where it crouched in soot, its jagged edge streaked with rust and gore. Her voice rips free, raw as sinew. You will not take him. The dark does not halt. It leans. The room buckles inward. Walls groan like timbers under storm. Clay splits in seams that ooze black, bleeding darkness that coils like snakes along the floor. Resin jars topple, herbs scatter, hissing where they strike embers. And through it all, the hum swells, bronze grinding slow, grinding sure, the song of scales yawning wide. Your chest bursts. Linen peels in ribbons. Resin snaps in flakes. Heat floods. Molten, searing hands, thighs, throat. The wound gapes, slick as a fish slit belly up, and through it bulges the heart, hammering slow and thick, its pulse stumbling like oars flogging mud. You seize it. How? You do not know. And clutch it high. Black ropes streaming to hiss where they patter clay. The bronze pan yawns in the gulf behind your eyes, the feather gleaming pale as moon milk. Shadows surge, gnawing your legs, lashing your arms. Yet you stagger forward because there is no backward, because the hall has opened and will not shut. The figure waits. Gold mask, linen limbs, hands outstretched like rods of law. Its eyes burn emptiness. The voice lashes you flat. Bring it forth. End the measure. Your fingers uncurl. The heart slides, a slick red moon, dipping toward bronze, and the cry cleaves the hush. A roar ripped raw, flung from a throat flayed by prayer and blood. Your wife, hurling herself through dark, the shard blazing like salt struck to flame. It arcs, bites, shears absence like cloth. Sparks spit white as sun-scorched sand. The hall reels. Bronze screams. Shadows scatter in squalls of soot. The heart jerks in your grasp. Twisting like an eel, you wrench back, clawing it to your chest as the gulf implodes, sucking scale, mask, and marrow into a maw that chews silence to dust. Clay slams. Smoke claws. Your wife sprawls where she fell, arms twisted, breath shredding in knives. Her eyes flick wide, wild coals guttering in wind, and fix on you as if her gaze could nail your soul to earth. Her lips twitch, split, shape a word that dies in ash. And from the doorway, where pale light seeps thin as gruel, the whisper curls like a noose of silk. Not yet, but soon. The bronze hum tolls faint, deep, grinding on the root of thought, and in its song coils the certainty that sears like frost in blood. The measure waits still. The feather gleams. The light slants low now, a weak thread dragged across the threshold, fraying against the dark that thickens in the corners like resin left to clot. The air reeks of soot and blood, of wine soured black in its jar, of honey boiled bitter in the heat that once licked the hearthstones. Smoke hangs limp, curling slow as oil over water, its coils snagging in the rafters where spiders fled long ago. Your wife sprawls where the wall caught her fall. Her body bows wrong, one arm crumpled beneath, like a broken stalk. Blood streaks her temple, slicking hair clumped with soot. Her chest lifts in shallow jerks, the breath rasping raw through teeth clenched tight as doors barred at night. Still, her hand claw the clay toward you, nails cracked to pale splinters, fingers dragging a thin line through dust and blood. You cannot move. Not for lack of will, but because the cords inside you not tighter than the flax she wound. Cords no hand of flesh can cut. Your chest yawns wide still, gaping like a tomb mouth unsealed, though the linen flutters loose where resin shattered in the last convulsion. Heat leaks in slow pulses, pooling black on the mat beneath. The heart throbs heavy in your grip, slick as river mud, its beat stumbling now, faltering as if even it knows the scales will not wait forever. The hum tolls low. It grinds through the marrow, bronze sawing bone to powder. The sound swells, not in the air, but in the skull, booming under thought, drowning prayer. It is the drone of law that does not bend, the song that threshed kings to chaff, that sifted slaves like grain, weighing breath against silence. You know its measure. You feel it strip flesh from name, name from soul, soul from shadow, until only the weight remains. And then, the room bows, not in quake, in surrender. The clay sweats black, bleeding down walls in ropes that writhe like asps. Cracks gape where roots should crawl, but what creeps is not root. It is night given limb, shadow poured to sinew, coiling in folds that spill across the floor. The torn mat lifts, its frayed tongue flicking once, twice, then splits wide, like jaws yawning for flood. Beyond, the day lies strangled in a dusk that smothers light, sky sagging low and gray as rotting linen stretched on stakes. What slides through the gap blots the world. It does not walk. It does not glide. It heaves, like a tide with hands, like smoke with bone, its bulk folding and unfolding until the roof bows, until the walls lean in worship or in fear. Faces flicker on its hide, jackal grins wet with ichor, falcon beak snapping, a lion's gape rimmed in gold, and between them something smooth, eyeless, drinking every shard of light. The hush it drags bruises the air, rings sound flat, throttles breath in throats. Only the bronze hum cleaves through, rising sharp as a blade stroked slow on stone. The voice rides it after. Not sound. Weight. It falls heavy as millstones, splitting thought, driving will to pulp. It is time. Your knees crumple though you do not rise. Your head jerks forward though no chords bid it. The hall blossoms behind your lids, sudden and vast, carved from dusk and silence. Pillars rearing like the bones of mountains, their flanks slick with glyphs that writhe and coil in streams of cold fire. Shadows squat in ranks along the walls, their backs bent, their mouths yawning wide without sound. And there, the scale. Its beam stretches bronze across the gulf, arms stiff as spears, humming a dirge older than sun. One pan cups the feather, pale as a blade honed from frost. The other gapes black, rim slick, lips curled in hunger. The masked figure waits beside, its gold face gleaming cold as moon on tomb sand. Its eyes, two pits drinking thought to dregs, pin you where you kneel. Its hands lift, long as rods, bones swaddled in linen stiff with age. The gesture razors through the hush. Bring it forth. You do. The chest splits like jars under a mallet. Resin spatters in clots. Linen peels in ribbons coiled pale as worms. The wound yawns wide, red as river reeds in flood. Heat surges in a tide that scalds your palms as you clutch what writhes within. The heart, slick and hammering, its beat lurching in jerks that jar the sinews to their roots. Blood ropes down your arms, pattering glyphs that drink it deep, lines flaring in tongues of black fire. You rise though your knees shear, your hips grind, your spine howls under the weight that should weigh nothing. The bronze hum keens, high now, slicing the dark like knives on whetstone. Shadows lash your calves, your thighs, your ribs, binding in coils of smoke cold enough to burn. Still you stagger, arms thrust high, heart gleaming wet as the sun drowned in pitch. The pan yawns near. The feather blazes white as salt hurled on flame. The hush knots thick, pulling thought taut until it frays to threads. The voice coils last, sweet and slow as honey laced with rot. End the measure. Lay it down. Your fingers uncurl. The heart slides, dragging ropes of black that hiss where they fall. It dips. It sinks. And the cry tears the hush. A roar ripped raw from a throat flayed to cords, hurled like a javelin of fire through the dark. It rakes the hall in shards of sound, flensing glyphs, buckling pillars. The scale reels, bronze shrieking under strain. The feather flares, white hot, molten, spraying sparks like a forge struck by storm. Shadows scatter in squalls of soot, clawing the vault as it sags, caves, folds inward on a wind that reeks of resin and old blood. You wrench back. The hall implodes, ripping mask, beam, and silence to dust. The gulf gulps them whole, then shuts in a clap that jars the teeth from thought. Clay slams. Smoke claws. Your wife sprawls where shadow flung her, chest stuttering, blood bubbling, black at her lip. Her eyes flick open, flicker, flame, die, then flare once more, a blaze branding you to earth. Her hand crawls, crooks, finds yours through the smear of gore, and clamps with a strength hoarded from the roots of will. And from the doorway where dust clots like clotted milk, the whisper slides, slick, certain, sweet as honey steeped in gall. Not yet, but soon. The bronze hum drones after, deep, patient, grinding through the marrow with its dirge of law. And in that song coils the truth colder than flood at midnight. The measure waits. The feather gleams. Dusk leans against the walls like a giant's palm, pressing the clay until it sweats black. The light outside has curdled into something gray and raw. Not day and not night. A smear that clings to the threshold like pus to a wound. Through the torn mat seeps a thin thread of wind, but its breath is no balm. It tastes of tomb dust, stirred from depths, of resin rotted sweet, of old blood caked on stone. Your wife does not stir. Her head lolls against the wall, hair fanned in mats of soot and clotted gore. Her chest jerks and stabs, each breath rasping through lips split to white. One arm sprawls crooked, palm upturned like a bowl cracked dry. Yet her other hand clamps yours still, nails splintered, flesh raw, grip welded by a will clawed from marrow. Its weight brands you deeper than chains. It tells you what her tongue cannot, that she will hold, even when the cords of bone shred under the pull that thrums unseen. The hearth is a mouth, gone toothless. Only ash crouches where flames once leapt, cold now but for the faint red eye glimmering in the pit's black socket. Smoke sags low, knotting in ropes that stir though no wind creeps here. They slither up the walls, coiling into shapes that twitch and shudder like reeds writhing in flood silt. And under it, gods. Under it hums the bronze. Soft first, sly as a gnat whining in the dark. Then swelling, thick as flood, grinding through the bones with a song that strips the flesh from thought. It tolls low, a dirge carved from ore, bound to law older than sun, older than sky, older than the mouths that mouthed the first prayers into Nile wind. Its weight flattens sound, wrings color from the air, knots the breath in your throat. You feel it saw through the last threads of tether, hear it drone through the gulf, yawning wider behind your eyes. The hall swells sudden. Clay gutters. Rafters sag. Walls bow and split. Then all spills away like silt under flood, and you stand in the dusk that is no dusk, the gray that gulps light whole. Pillars spear up in ranks, their flanks sleek with glyphs that twitch like serpents shedding skins. The floor gleams black, etched with lines that smoke cold fire, pulsing in time to your faltering heart. And at the gulf's heart crouches the scale, bronze arms outstretched, stiff as rods thrust through flesh. One pan cups the feather, white, pitiless, a sliver carved from moon frost. The other yawns wide, rim slick, lips curled in hunger that hums through the vault like bees in a skull. Beside it looms the masked figure, limbs swaddled in linen stiff with centuries, gold face burning with a light that sears but does not warm. Its hands rise, rods of law, slicing the hush like adzes splitting bone. The voice follows, thick as millstones grinding marrow. Bring it forth. Your chest tears. Resin bursts in shards. Linen flays in whips. Heat gushes black-red, steaming where it strikes the glyphs that drink it like mouse. The heart lurches free in your grip, slick and hammering. Each throb a spasm that jars the joints from their roots. Blood ropes down your arms, pattering in pools that hiss and spit sparks like fat in flame. You clutch it high, higher, though the weight bows your spine, drags your sinews like oxen flogged to bone. Shadows lash your legs, your flanks, your throat, yet you stagger forward because the law that calls admits no crouch, no stay, no plea. The bronze yawns near. The feather blazes white as salt and fire. The hum keens high, shrilling thin as a blade drawn slow. The air knots hard, throttling breath, until the hush splits your skull in seams. The whisper coils through, sweet and foul as honey stewed with rot. End the measure. Lay it down. Your fingers slacken. The heart slides, dragging black ropes, slicking bronze lips with streaks of night. The pan dips to drink. And a cry rips the vault. Not a name, not a word. A roar, raw as flayed flesh, torn from the root of soul, hurled like a flint axe cleaving reeds. It rends the hush to rags, splinters pillars, lashes glyphs into sparks of black fire. The scale reels on its beam, bronze screaming like a bull speared in flood. The feather flares white hot, spitting shards that scald your cheeks like molten salt. Shadows scatter in storms of soot. The hall convulses. You wrench back, clutching the heart, clutching the slick heat that spits and writhes in your fists. The gulf gulps the law, the mask, the beam in a clap that jars the teeth from thought. Darkness folds, sucks, snaps, then vomits you on clay that jars bone raw. Smoke claws the lungs. Ash stings the eye. Your wife lies sprawled near, her breath a thread frayed thin, yet her hand crawls, claws, gropes until it hooks your wrist. Her nails bite blood. Her eyes, gods, those eyes, flare through soot like coals clinging to flame. And from the doorway where dusk squats thick as clot, the whisper slides, silk soft, certain, dripping like resin steeped in gall. Not yet, but soon. The bronze hum lingers, faint, a throb deep as roots in stone, and under it curls the truth no cry can cleave. The measure waits still. The feather gleams. The night drops heavy, thick as oil spilled on Nile water. Outside, no sound moves. No jackals cry, no cranes wail, not even the winds hiss along the reeds. Silence presses the walls until they sag, until the clay sweats black and flakes peel like scabs from its skin. Shadows stretch long from the hearth's last coal, crawling in loops that knot across the floor like cords spun for binding the dead. Your wife clings yet. Her body lies crooked as a withered stalk, breath hitching in jerks, ribs rasping under linen stiff with blood. The hand that grips yours is a claw of bone and salt, yet its clutch brands your wrist as if hammered there by gods. Her lips shape no word now, only twitch, split and raw, dragging the ghost of prayer across teeth ground to dust by cries the dark drank whole. You bend, press your brow to hers, and her heat scalds, boiling up from marrow that should be ash. It reeks of fever, sweet and foul as honey rotted in sealed jars. You whisper her name, think you do, but the sound unravels in your throat, swallowed by the weight thickening the air. Because it has come back. Not creeping. Not waiting. Here. The mat bows inward as though kneeling to its lord. Its fibers gape like teeth in a jaw that yawns for flood. Beyond it, the dusk has curdled black, pooling in folds that bulge and writhe as if something vast breathes slow beneath its skin. Then the breath spills through. Cold, it sluices the room in a tide that gnaws the marrow, curdling sweat to frost, congealing blood on the floor in ropes of tar. Smoke jerks, coils, knots and whips that lash the rafters till they groan like masts in storm. And from that gulf, the hum wells, low first, then grinding, bronze sawing through bone, through law, through the root of thought. It swells till the ribs of the world bow, till the air rings like a gong drowned in water. And riding it, thick as stone, sweet as rot, the whisper wins, silk soft and certain. It is time. The dark spills, rolling like silt in flood, folding, unfolding, folding again till it towers to the roof. Faces flare and die across its hide. Jackal jaws gaping black. Falcon beak snapping shards of light. A lion's grin rimmed in molten gold. Between them slides the mask smooth and blind. Its pits yawning deeper than any tomb shaft gouged in cliff. The hush it drags strangles the room. Wrings the smoke to pulp. Shreds your wife's sob to threads too thin for gods to hear. Your chest bursts. Resin shatters like frost under a smith's hammer. Linen frays, flaying in whips. Heat gushes black red, spattering clay in arcs that hiss where they strike. The wound gapes wide, raw as a pit gutted in silt, and through it lurches the heart, slick and hammering, its beat reeling like oars flogging mud in ebb tide. You seize it, clutching the pulse that slams your wrists, that jars the joints from sockets, that saws sinew to shreds. Blood ropes down your arms in braids that writhe like eels, coiling in glyphs that flare brief, black fire on clay. The hall blossoms, sudden, savage swallowing sight. Pillars spear the dusk, their flanks slick with glyphs that twist like worms in flood silt. Shadows kneel in files, mouths yawning wide without sound. The floor glares wet, veined with lines smoking cold flame. And there, the scale. Bronze beams stretched stiff as rods thrust through kings, its pans yawning wide. One cups the feather, white as frost under moon. The other gapes, lips glistening slick, hunger humming through the vault like bees swarming a skull. Beside it broods the figure masked in gold, limbs swaddled in linen dark with rot. Its hands rise, slicing the hush in rods of law, and the voice lashes through the marrow like chains dragged through flood mud. Bring it forth. You rise though knees shear, though hips shriek, though the cord of your spine bows under weight that should weigh no more than breath. You stagger, hard gripped high, black ropes streaming from its flanks to writhe on stone that is not stone. Shadows lash your calves, your ribs, your throat, binding, biting cold as iron quenched in Nile silt. Still you lurch, still you lift, because the law admits no crouch, no stay, no plea. The bronze yawns near. The feather blazes white as salt in flame. The whisper curls last, sweet as honey steeped in gall. End the measure. Lay it down. Your fingers slacken. The heart slides. Bronze lips drink black. The hum keens high, thin as a blade splitting reeds. Shadows shriek, then scatter in whirlwinds of soot as a cry rips the vault. Not yours. Hers. A roar raw as sinew torn from bone, flung from a throat flayed to cords, hurled like fire through flood night. It cleaves the law to shards, flays glyphs from stone, lashes the mask from its roots. The hall convulses. The beam reels. Bronze screaming like bulls under knives. The feather flares white hot, spitting shards that scour your cheeks like salt in wounds. Darkness bucks, gulps, caves in a clap that jars the teeth from thought. Clay slams, smoke claws. You sprawl where the mat sags in dust, heart clutched, slick and writhing, its beat stumbling like a drum drowned in mud. Your wife sprawls near, breath shredding, eyes flaring through soot like brands snatched from fire. Her hand crawls, claws, grips your wrist with a strength hoarded from the roots of will. Her nails bite blood. Her gaze brands the dark, binds your soul to this clay, though the cords that lash it fray to threads. And from the doorway where dusk clots thick as resin steeped in blood, the whisper whines, silk soft, certain, a weight no cry can break. Not yet, but soon. The bronze hum lingers, low, patient, grinding through the marrow like flood-gnawing stone. And you know, cold, bitter, black as Nile water in moon's last slit. The measure waits still. The feather gleams,